Chapter 389 I Know Them. Chapter 389 I Know Them. Shurian was standing at a castle window with the two brothers, looking out towards the surrounding four symbols mountain range. He could clearly see the four mountains exploding and seeming to have some terrible changes. Waves of beasts' roars came up from the four mountains. It seemed that countless dormant beasts in the four symbols mountain range were about to rush into the ancient city and crush all warriors into powder. As the beasts roared, lightning gradually flashed from the azure dragon mount in the east and then slowly flew over. From the white tiger mount in the west, violent tornadoes raged and churned up, slaughtering and destroying anything in its path. The tornadoes pulled huge lava rocks up to the sky. Each block of lava rock contained horrendous power. From the Vermilion Bird Mount in the south, clusters of fires started to rage, dyeing the entire sky dark red as if the sky were also being burned by scorching fires. The Black Turtle Mount in the north was flooded with ice and extremely falling thick snowflakes. In just one breath, the Black Turtle Mount was covered with dense white snow. Changes continuously happened in the four mountains of the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Turtle, probably affecting ancient formations. Lightning, tornadoes, flames, and snow continued spreading toward the ancient city, getting closer. The four mountains constantly changed, which made the hiding beasts suddenly become crazy. In those ear-piercing roars, hundreds of 6th or 7th level beasts scattered out from the mountains. Their eyes were filled with brutality while they rushed toward the ancient city in a craze. Giant, three-headed alligators, silver demon wolves, and single-horned dragon pythons, those who were rarely seen, now showed up one by one. Groups of beasts stormed out like a surging tide, quickly invading the ancient city. Seeing the changes of the four symbols mountain range, many warriors inside the ancient city's stone fortresses were quite horrified and instantly went out of the castles wearing solemn faces as they watched the beasts attacking aggressively. They all stayed on alert. Be careful. It seems that the peculiar change of this miasma place is about to begin. Aya tightly knitted her eyebrows. The beasts will outnumber the warriors. If we are careless, those beasts will immediately besiege us, and it will be difficult for us to escape. Kai, Laoli, and Laoluin watched the influx of the beasts with serious faces while taking out secret treasures from their storage rings, preparing to deal with these beasts. Other groups of warriors were still hiding inside the castles, standing firmly at the entrance, watching the beasts from the ground and the sky rushing over. Everyone was wearing heavy faces. These beasts seemed to know the ancient city's situation. As soon as they rushed into the ancient city, they immediately spread out to all the places the warriors could have been hiding in the castle. The stone castles had many windows, but simply couldn't stop the beasts that could fly. Those flying beasts used their brutal force to tear down the fence of windows and then drilled into the castle to search for warriors. Beasts had an extreme hostility toward the invasion of human warriors. Their mission seemed to be to kill all human warriors. 10 6th-level green armored scale falcons and 3 7th-level single-horned pythons drilled through the windows toward the stone castle of Shurian's group. The green armored scale falcons had the ability to fly with a pointy beak, thick skin, and sharp claws like swords that emitted dense, icy lights. This green armored scale falcon had many scales on its body. Those scales couldn't be damaged by the majority of hacking weapons, and thus it was challenging to cope with. The 7th-level single-horned dragon python was even more terrible. The horn of a single-horned dragon python was all-conquering, which could be compared to divine weapons which had been forged and refined hundreds of times. The dragon python's saliva was highly toxic and could utilize the power of frost. Once the single-horned dragon python got close to a person, its saliva and the power of frost would be spurted out together. Even the defensive halos released by Sky Realm warriors couldn't stop that highly toxic saliva, which could dissolve many kinds of defenses. The power of frost could greatly weaken the defensive halos. When the defensive halos disappeared after a blink, a single-horned dragon python would dash over, tearing apart and destroying the warriors. Unless warriors had gone through a special body refining cultivation, single-horned dragon pythons would strike them and pierce through their bodies. 10 green armored scale falcons and 3 single-horned dragon pythons spread out and quickly rushed toward Shurien's group. It only took them a short while to find the whereabouts of the 5 people of Shurien's group. They immediately aggregated and rushed toward them. 3 single-horned dragon pythons and 10 green armored scale falcons. Aya couldn't help but scream out loud while her face changed dramatically. Not good. These beasts are coming all together. I am afraid that we are not able to beat them in batches. Everyone must cast out your full power shots to kill all of these beasts in the shortest possible time at all cost. The more beasts come, the less chance we have to get out alive. Lightning, flames, tornadoes, and ice are slowly moving towards the ancient city. If we can't handle all of these beasts in a short time, it will be more difficult for us when they come from the 4 mountains and envelope the ancient city. Tsai's face stiffened. 3 silhouettes suddenly flashed up in another stone castle, which was a few hundred meters away on the left. After those 3 people had gone outside, they worriedly looked around and immediately dashed toward Shurien's group. The 3 of them were 2 males and 1 female. The 2 men were 70-year-old warriors and dressed in flower blouses. Their faces now looked odd as the beasts were chasing them. They looked miserable. The girl was in the front of the 2 men. She was long-limbed, wearing a light yellow skirt with white teeth and shining eyes. She was incredibly beautiful. These 3 people seemed to have realized that the beasts that had jumped into their stone castle were too strong, and had known that if they stayed, they would have been killed. Hence, they ran out of the stone castle to find someone that they could join forces with to deal with these beasts. Behind the 3 of them, 10 beasts rushed out of the stone castle, showing fangs and claws, letting out crazy roars and staring at them. "Grandpa, hurry up!" The girl anxiously called out. Her body suddenly changed and separated into 5 phantoms, escaping in 4 directions. Her true body hovered and swayed in the air. A vigorous flow of aura burst out from her body and then suddenly rushed toward Shurien. When seeing those 3 people rushing over, the faces of Laoli and Aya instantly changed at the same time. They couldn't help but curse. The 3 of them, who couldn't cope with the beasts, brought the beasts into Shurien's castle and borrowed the strength of Shurien's group to deal with them. It was already difficult for the 5 people of Shurien's group to deal with the 10 green armored scale falcons and 3 single-horned dragon pythons. If they added the beasts behind those 3 people, they would become more passive and perhaps they would be killed. Laoli and Kai exchanged glances. Cold lights flowed out from their eyes. They were ready to cast a fatal strike, rushing toward the girl to exterminate her. This girl only had the Earth Realm cultivation base. Although she was mysterious, as long as Laoli and Kai released their full shots, that girl would certainly not be able to stop them and would be beheaded by Laoli and Kai. Shurien turned his back to Laoli and Kai, consistently releasing his power into the gravitational field. Hearing the girls shout, he suddenly showed a very puzzled look. After completing the gravitational field, Shurien turned around and saw Kai and Laoli ready to kill the girl. "Stop!" Shurien threw a quick glance at that girl, and his face immediately changed. He hastily shouted, which stopped Kai and Laoli. Kai and Laoli were stunned. The energy waves on their hands were getting more vibrant. They were still urging their power to be ready to cast out their strikes. As long as they pushed out those energy waves, that girl would hardly stand a chance. Shurien shouted out loud, making Kai and Laoli freeze. They both displayed a puzzled look on their faces, not understanding why he stopped them at the crucial time. "Oh!" the girl exclaimed. Her eyes flashed up with strange lights. She looked at Shurien, seemed to remember someone, and then pointed to Shurien and unsurely said, You are! "Zwesher, it's been a long time since I've seen you." Shurian revealed a faint smile. How did you get here? You are Shurian? Are you really Shurian? Zwusher was overjoyed with an expression of disbelief. Didn't you already return to the Endless Sea? Why did you come back here? The two elderly men behind Zwusher were grandfathers of the Zwo family and that misty mountain range Chishao. When seeing Zwusher surprisingly shout, the two men also looked at Shurian and showed a very surprised expression. Come here first, and then we can talk later. Shurian shouted, nodded toward Kai and Laoli and said, I know them. Let them come in. Tsai's and Laoli's faces looked reluctant, but they still followed Shurian's command without any defiance. They frowned while stepping aside, giving way to Zwusher to enter the stone castle first. Shurian's mind was slightly triggered. The gravitational field, which had been amassed for a long time, suddenly flew toward Zwasu and Chishao. The 5 huge, 3-headed alligators, which were closely chasing Zwasu and Chishao, were suddenly sucked into the golden silks inside that crazily spinning gravitational field. Those golden silks were extremely sharp. As soon as the 3-headed alligators were pulled into the gravitational field, they were soon cut up and crushed into powder. Demon crystals. Chishao and Zwasu were both surprised and cheerfully shouted together. They looked at the demon crystals, revealing a look of desire. These 3 people should have gone through unwanted situations in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist. When the 5 demon crystals appeared, Chishao and Zwasu obviously couldn't keep calm and even stopped, wanting to go into the dark, magnetic, noxious mist to take the demon crystals. Do not touch those demon crystals. Come here first. Shurian shouted out loud. Zwasu and Chishao were startled. They immediately reacted and rushed over. How did you get here? Shurian shouted. There's a nautical chart on the little Shur's dragon turtle armor. We based our directions on the chart to get here all the way from the Merchant Union. On the way here, we've lost a lot of people. After entering this place, there's only 3 of us left. Chishao's face was sad. He shouted, and together with Chishao, he walked toward the platform where Shurian's group was standing. Shurian, how come you are here? Oh, your cultivation base is now in the 3rd sky of Nirvana Realm. The same as mine? The head of the Zwo family, Zwasu, suddenly screamed out while his eyes glimmered with a trace of incredibility. Chishao and Zwusher were also startled. Chapter 390, Fearless. Chapter 390, Fearless. Outside the stone castle, the beasts were aggressively showing their fangs and claws. They let out terrifying roars, gathered next to Shurian's group, and were ready to rush over at any moment. The 3 gravitational fields flew around in front of the stone castle. Golden silks emitted gold lights and spanned like sharp blades inside the gravitational fields. 10 green armored scale falcons and 3 single-horned dragon pythons seemed to know that the gravitational fields were not easy to deal with as they ruthlessly stared at Shurian's group, but didn't dare to move toward the gravitational fields to attack. They could only stay outside the gravitational fields without scattering, seeming to wait for something. When Zwusher, Zwasu, and Chishao entered Shurian's stone castle, they also dragged along 9 beasts. These beasts were the giant 6th level 3-headed crocodiles and giant 7th level 8-horned giant spiders. There were 3 giant 8-horned giant spiders, each of which was as big as a millstone. Their legs were shining with brilliant icy lights. They were very flexible and active in the air, letting out strange, ear-splitting sounds. 1 gravitational field strangled a 3-headed crocodile and hung it in the direction where Zwusher and the other 2 were coming from. The 3-headed crocodile died instantly. That prevented the remaining 3-headed crocodiles and the 8-horned giant spider from recklessly acting as they were afraid of following in the footsteps of that dead 3-headed crocodile. They could only keep a distance from the gravitational field and stare at the 3 people of Zwusher. As Shurian's group was approaching, only with a glance, Zwasu could immediately realize Shurian's cultivation base. His face was shocked while he subconsciously cried out in fear. Qishao and Zwusher were exceedingly astonished as well, looking at Shiryan with eyes of disbelief. They didn't know what Shiryan had done in just a few years to be able to reach the third sky of Nirvana realm. Let's talk later. Now is not a good time to reminisce. Shiryan's face was solemn as he concentrated on controlling the gravitational fields, constantly moving them to prevent those beasts from having a chance to get closer. The stone castle was 100 meters high, but Shiryan's group was only about 30 meters from the ground. This distance was not out of the beasts' reach. Even if they couldn't fly, using a violent force was enough for them to be able to leap up. Without the gravitational fields, those beasts would certainly sprint up and penetrate the castle. A single-horn dragon python and 3 green armored scale falcons that had come before were staring at them, waiting for an opportunity behind the stone fortress. When the 9 beasts which had been following Zwisu all came together, they quickly blocked all directions without leaving any gap for Shiryan's people to escape. Aya and Kai coldly looked at Zwusher with annoyed faces. Qishao was at the second sky of Sky Realm. Meanwhile, Zwusher was just in the Earth Realm, and Zwisu was only at the third sky of Nirvana Realm. To Aya and Kai, that kind of ability was only cumbersome for them. If it were Aya calling the shots, even if she knew Shiryan, she would not hesitate to kick them out and let them fend for themselves. However, Shiryan had used his strength to prove his position in the team. Even though Aya and Kai were not happy, they didn't want to have any conflicts with Shiryan and could only accept Shiryan's arrangement. Zwusher, you should not move. Hide behind us. The rest of us should be ready to cope with the beast's sneaky attacks. Shiryan coldly looked at Aya and Kai and said with a cold face, "These 3 are my friends. If you 2 dare to cause any mischief, don't blame me for not having mercy." Aya's and Sai's beautiful faces changed. They grunted but did not refuse. When hearing Shiryan's words, the 3 people of Qishao's group shuddered at heart. They were secretly vigilant and prepared to guard against Aya and Kai. Qishao and Zwisu were old foxes. Through Shiryan's words, they could see that Aya, Kai, and Shiryan were not really intimate. Facing the rampant beasts in the ancient city, everyone felt insecure. At this point in time, the scariest thing was people's wicked hearts. The 3 of them who came here from the Merchant Union had gone through many hardships and encountered a lot of warriors who had wanted to kill them. They soon knew that there wasn't any good person in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist, and that they had to rely on themselves to snatch the privilege of having eternal life. Little Shir, don't worry about the beasts. Listen to Shiryan. Protect yourself. Qishao whispered. Zwusher blinked, nodded obediently. Her pretty eyes brightened, looking at Shiryan. Beasts from every direction were wandering around. Shiryan was standing in front of the stone fortress with a cold face and resolute eyes. He looked like a 10,000-year-old rock which seemed unwavering while emitting a mighty temperament that only a man could possess. At this moment, Shiryan undoubtedly carried a mesmerizing male charm. After not seeing him for ages, in her most dangerous time, she unexpectedly ran into Shiryan, who had gone missing for a long while. Zwusher's heart was involuntarily agitated a little bit. She subconsciously wondered if this was God's predestined wood or not. Previously in the Merchant Union, Shiryan had a special personality. He was cold and ruthless, and thus had left a deep impression in Zwusher's heart. After he had left the Merchant Union, Zwusher always thought of him. She couldn't control her mind as she often compared Shiryan with the so-called young, outstanding talents of Merchant Union, the Fire Empire. The more comparisons she made, the more she felt that those outstanding youths of Merchant Union, the Fire Empire, and God-blessed Empire seemed to be much inferior to Shiryan. Regardless of their realm or their mind, they were not as prominent as Shiryan. Shiryan had been gone for a few years. Zwisu used to make arrangements for her to meet young men from different powerful forces of the Fire Empire and the God-blessed Empire. However, It was unknown why she had always been dissatisfied with those men and had secretly compared them with Shiryan. The more she had compared, the more she felt that those people were not as good as Shiryan. Zwasher assumed that she would hardly see Shiryan again. However, she now suddenly met him in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist. This unexpected encounter made her both happy and scared at the same time. Watching Shiryan's fearless manners when facing numerous beasts, the nervous tension she had been suffering from all along seemed to relax all of a sudden. Elder Qishao, you stand over there and be ready to deal with the giant 8-horn giant spiders. So grandfather, you and Qishao stay in one place to guard that side. Shiryan pointed out a direction and then suddenly looked at Kai and the two brothers. You stay on the left. Be ready to cope with the single-horn dragon pythons below. Aya, you pay attention to our back. Under the beast's gaze, Shiryan calmed down, coldly looked ahead, and said, once those beasts rush over, we must use our full power to kill them. We shouldn't consume too much of our strength either. There are also flames, lightning, tornadoes, and ice outside the castle. Not only must we kill all of these beasts, but we shouldn't allow ourselves to suffer a great loss. Aya and the others nodded at the same time. Qishao and Zwisu exchanged glances. In the Merchant Union, Shiryan had only had Disaster Realm cultivation base. Although he had displayed an outstanding performance, he was just an arrogant young generation of the Shir family. Compared to Zwishu's and Qishao's status by that time, Shiryan had apparently been far less than them. Through the times, not only had Shiryan reached the third sky of Nirvana Realm, but he could also instigate the 2 sky realm female warriors. Looking at these 2 girls' attitudes, they seemed to actually listen to his orders. Witnessing it with their own eyes, Zwisu and Qishao were secretly scared and somehow could hardly accept this for the moment. After all, in the Merchant Union, when having dealt with the Baiming family, Shiryan had to listen to their commands, show his respect toward them, and consider them his elders. Suddenly, the situation had changed significantly. They naturally felt a bit strange. Zwisu and Qishao hesitated but didn't say anything. They just reluctantly let out a sigh and finally obeyed Shiryan's commands as well. Those beasts are waiting for flames and lightning to overflow from the 4 Symbols Mountains. They want to wait for those dangers to come and then take actions altogether. Kai was standing next to Shiryan, carefully observing the changes in the edge of the ancient city. Her beautiful face slightly changed, and he then said with a terrified voice, the flames, lightning, tornadoes, and ice don't seem to be aimed at the beasts. Look. After hearing that, everyone looked toward the outskirts of the ancient city. Indeed, those dangers from the 4 mountains gradually enveloped and began to ravage the ancient city. However, the beasts were still safe under the dangers of flames, lightning, tornadoes, and ice. Those threats could severely injure none of the beasts. Those dangers couldn't even shake the beasts' bodies, but on the contrary, they seemed to enhance their power. After some human warriors had been shrouded by the flames, lightning, tornadoes, and ice, they were either burned up by the flames or frozen by the ice and then blown away by the storm. While the beasts were unharmed, human warriors seemed to be unable to bear those dangers. The human warriors let out ear-splitting screams and quickly avoided the severe weather in panic when those dangers were gradually approaching. Seeing the situation was not going well, the warriors in the peripheral fortress all ran out of those stone fortresses and rushed toward the center of the ancient city. The flames, tornadoes, lightning, and ice slowly approached the ancient city. The center of the city would be the last area to be affected. Thus, moving toward the center of the ancient city would allow them to encounter those disasters much later. Although they were not sure doing this would help them escape from this fatal incident or not, it still helped them delay the time of encountering those disasters and delay their deaths. Therefore, those warriors outside, who were under the chase and slaughter of the beasts, were desperately running toward the center of the ancient city. Hundreds of figures were speeding on the streets of the ancient city. They didn't dare to fight against the beasts, but instead quickly moved toward the center of the ancient city. The stone fortress that Shurian's group was staying in was not in the center of the ancient city either. There was a big road between their fortress and the center. Those warriors flew over and thus dragged along the beasts that were chasing them. Those beasts were like surging tides running into the ancient city, getting closer and closer to Shurian's group. Not good. We need to get to the center of the ancient city. Otherwise, those beasts will exterminate us on their way. After Shurian thoroughly understood the situation, his face lost color while his hair rose up. He didn't dare to waste a second, shouting out loud, "Rush out at once!" Chapter 391 Brutal Killing. Chapter 391 Brutal Killing. As soon as Shurian shouted, changes started to suddenly appear in the two rivers that were interweaving and hanging in the sky. The weaving point of the two rivers discharged beautiful, dazzling lights, as an extremely violent energy suddenly spread out from that point. In the middle of those blazing lights, ancient corpses sank into the flashing lights and were pulled up and down by the river. The river seemed to contain some secret treasures, which were vaguely visible and were moving towards that weaving point for convergence. Crash! Silver raindrops drizzled down, and the light rain quickly turned into a downpour. The silver shower net came down from the sky, collecting in a shallow lake in the center of the ancient city. That small lake was originally dry. However, after that silver rain, it immediately became moist, and in a short time, the lake had accumulated a few centimeters of water. The silver lake emitted drizzling silver lights, covering the entire sky. When the silver raindrops touched those beasts that were near the lake, they all screamed miserably and turned into diluted blood within seconds. However, human warriors who gathered there were unharmed when the splashing raindrops touched them. The silver raindrops from the sky seemed to aim for the beasts, while they caused no damage to the human warriors. This mutation made those warriors extremely overjoyed. The warriors who were still wandering around rushed into the lake quickly and were shrouded by the silver halo. Some beasts came close to the small lake, but could only stare at those warriors with eyes filled with hatred, not daring to jump into the lake or approach that silver halo. They seemed to know that those silver lights were only meant to harm them. Hence, they only stayed in the periphery area of the lake, fiercely looking at those human warriors. All warriors were moving and gathering towards the center of the ancient city. After realizing the lake's abnormality, they were all excited and rushed towards the lake. Anyone could see that other areas of the ancient city were not safe. Only the lake area in the center of the city could prevent the beast's attack. Countless stars were sparkling on Shurian's body. He could also see the marvelousness on the other side and thus shouted, "Go over there!" Aya, Kai, and other people looked excited as they could now see hope. They hurriedly rushed out of the stone castle. Aya and Chao Yi, who were in the sky realm, suspended next to Shurian and shouted, "We must hurry. If too many beasts gather around us, we won't be able to pass through them. Aya and Kai, you go with Lao Li and Lao Luan. Elder Qi Shao, bring Zhuasu and Zhuashir over there with your fastest speed. I will stay behind to support you guys." Shurian shouted. Qi Shao didn't say anything as he brought Zhuasu and Zhuashir with each hand and quickly flew over to Shurian's side. "Shurian, can you do that?" Zhuashir worried. When Qi Shao was carrying her, she tried to stretch her head out with a tense face. Although you have a cultivation base of the third sky of Nirvana realm, you cannot resist these beasts as there are too many of them. If you are careless, it will be dangerous for you. Can you do it? Ai also asked the same thing. Her face, however, didn't show much emotion. She simply asked because she was afraid that if Shurian couldn't complete this work, it would put her in a difficult situation. Aiya and Kai actually didn't want to bring Lao Li and Lao Luan. Carrying a person would hinder them when facing the beasts and prevent them from casting out their strength, which would slow down their speed. Stop talking nonsense. Shi Yan grunted. Before we can leave the dark, magnetic, noxious mist, we will have to work together. The two brothers haven't reached the sky realm and thus cannot fly. If you leave them behind, I will have to abandon you. I have already had a look, and that lake is not big. If we arrive there too late, the lake will be filled with too many people. Thus, if we want to get into that lake, then we will have to kick others out of it. And if we do not have consensus now, we will have less help by that time. Lao Li and Lao Luan expressed appreciation. After listening to Shi Yan, they reluctantly agreed and were no longer long-winded. They quickly grabbed the two brothers' hands and leaped up. Go! Shi Yan suddenly moved the gravitational fields while roaring out loud. The three gravitational fields now looked like crazy meat blenders, reverberating with ear-piercing sounds. The three gravitational fields immediately changed directions, moving towards the beasts which were wandering and approaching the group of Qi Xiao and Kai Yi, creating a road leading straight to the center of the ancient city. Zuosu's group didn't dare to hesitate and immediately sped up, moving towards the center of the ancient city. Shi Yan lagged behind. His eyes were cold while he revealed a sneer. He used his mind to control the gravitational fields, clearing the road for the people of Zuosu's group. Three gravitational fields floated around Zuosu's group, preventing the beasts from coming closer. With these three gravitational fields, they didn't have to be scared of the beasts which were now on their sides or behind them. They just rushed forward all the way. Shi Yan was the last one, controlling the gravitational fields. He waited for the three people to leave and then once again triggered his mind, ordering the three gravitational fields to gather in one place, forming an enormous gray tornado. After the integration of the three gravitational fields, this gray tornado was indeed obscure and almost comparable to the 100 meters high castle. More than 10 sturdy beasts saw the people of Zuosu's group fly away and then suddenly made their way to Shi Yan, staring at him. Seeing the beasts coming toward him aggressively, he remained calm. He turned into a bunch of starlights and instantly merged into the huge gray tornado, controlling it and moving towards the direction of Qi Zhao's group. As Shi Yan was in the gravitational field, the beasts didn't dare to come close, but just stared from a distance. This gray tornado monopolized the whole area behind Zuosu's group. The beasts that wanted to pass through the tornado were forced to take a detour. While they were detouring, Shi Yan displayed the life and death seal. The seals power-bombed out of his hands. It created huge roars and hit those beasts, making them wobble and stagger. Having built the gravitational field, he naturally couldn't suffer from its strangling force. But after having fallen into it, his mind was agitated. The golden silks were bound in a region under the influence of the gravitational field, and thus stayed motionless in one spot. The golden silks were extremely sharp. Even he didn't dare to see if his body could withstand them or not. At this time, when the situation was critical, he didn't dare to try the powerful golden silk. In the gravitational field, he was stagnant and could only concentrate on controlling the gravitational field, slowly moving towards the center of the ancient city. Qi Xiao and the others sprinted in the air. They instantly avoided the beasts as soon as they came close. In case they really couldn't avoid the beasts, they would work together to push the beasts to the side. They didn't seek to kill many beasts. They just needed to save a little more time to reach the center of the ancient city. What Aiya and Qi Xiao did was undoubtedly correct. The beasts rushed over from the 4 surrounding mountains. Most of them were in the periphery area of the ancient city. On the contrary, there were much fewer beasts in the area near the center of the city. In the center of the ancient city, the warriors who were hiding in the small Silver Lake had beheaded some beasts, helping reduce their number. Therefore, the closer they got to the center of the ancient city, the fewer beasts they had to face. Thus, it was naturally quite safe. On the contrary, outside the city center, as more and more beasts hustled over, those warriors who hadn't realized the situation were quickly submerged under the beast wave and bitten into pieces. The gravitational field flew around at a moderate speed. Along the way, Shiryen continuously took actions, dragging 10 warriors who had been killed recently into the gravitational field to absorb their auras. Thus, his harvest was not small at all. He was willing to bear the task of guarding at the back because he precisely spotted the opportunity to take advantage of the chaotic situation to absorb the auras of the dead warriors. With the gravitational field, he didn't need to worry about being besieged by those beasts. Having this confidence, together with this coincident opportunity, he certainly would not let it go. Dozens of dead warriors' corpses were tied up at the same places with the golden silks in every corner of the gravitational field, and were firmly wrapped up by the gravitational field as well. While the auras were running into his body, he took the demon crystals out and stored them inside the blood vein ring. He calmly controlled the gravitational field while moving towards the center of the ancient city. Suddenly, changes started to happen in the small, silver lake in the center of the ancient city again. The small lake was only 10 square meters, which was not large and only was able to accommodate few warriors. The warriors who got into that lake were enjoying their peaceful time without being worried about the beast's attacks. Thus, they obviously didn't want to leave. However, warriors who rushed into the center of the city after having gone through many dangers also wanted to jump into the lake. With that modest area, it was not enough for all the warriors. The newly arrived warriors could only occupy the position of others if they wanted to get into the lake, or else they would be left outside. At this time, hundreds of beasts were starting to gather in the center of the ancient city. Once all those beasts made it to the center, they would absolutely exterminate warriors who were left outside of the lake. By that time, those warriors who stayed outside of the lake would be torn down to pieces and wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, in order to occupy the positions in the lake, the warriors began to fight with each other for their own lives. Hence, those warriors recklessly rushed into the lake. The strange thing was that warriors couldn't fly above the lake, even if they were sky realm warriors. They couldn't just hang around above the lake and enjoy that silver halo. Everyone who wanted to get into the lake to avoid the flood of beasts' attacks would inevitably have to fight. This was the human warrior-led battle, and even more cruel than the one with the beasts. In the gravitational field, which was a few hundred meters away, Shiryen saw an area where many secret treasures were rampaging. Brilliant lights splashed out everywhere. All kinds of ice and lightning were constantly bursting out. Suddenly, 2 messages were transmitted out from the blood vein ring. Let us out. The messages came from the ice-cold flame and the earth flame. These 2 heaven flames were moving and swaying inside the blood vein ring as they seemed to spot some potential benefits. Chapter 392. Give me a position. Chapter 392. Give me a position. What? Shiryen was shocked and immediately asked, why? This place has the power that we need to restore ourselves. The earth flame and the ice-cold flame sent out the same message. A trace of happiness flashed across Shiryen's face. He didn't say anything further and quickly communicated with the blood vein ring, passing out his intention. The blood vein ring emitted hazy rainbow lights. 2 groups of huge burning fires flew out of it. After having left the blood vein ring, the ice-cold flame and the earth flame immediately spread out, dashing toward the Vermilion Bird Mount and Black Turtle Mount, respectively. These 2 great heaven flames flew extremely fast like electricity. In a blink, they already arrived at the Vermilion Bird Mount and the Black Turtle Mount and then went directly into the 2 mountains. In the ancient city, the tornadoes, ice, and lightning didn't seem to affect the ice-cold flame and the earth flame. Shiryen didn't see them encounter any obstacles on the way. Seeing the ice-cold flame and the earth flame disappearing into the Vermilion Bird Mount and the Black Turtle Mount, Shurian was both delighted and scared. He vaguely knew that the flames of the Vermilion Bird Mount and the frost of the Black Turtle Mount seemed to be able to fill the power that they had lost. Knowing that the Vermilion Bird Mount and the Black Turtle Mount had great benefits for the two kinds of fire, Shurian was overjoyed and felt that the trip to the dark, magnetic, noxious mist was the right choice. Hiding in the gravitational field, Shurian was not anxious to go to the center of the ancient city. While looking at that place from afar, he continued collecting the dead warriors' bodies on his way to the center of the city, pulling them into the gravitational field. Beside the Silver Lake, sword lights constantly flashed as the brutal fighting continued. The strengths of the warriors from the Divine Land who could enter this miasma place were not weak. They certainly had some secret treasures for self-defense, and their martial techniques were also quite mysterious. In order to occupy one position in the Silver Lake, the warriors who were still wandering outside the lake began to attack those in the lake. With the lake as a center, all warriors displayed their own martial techniques and took out their secret treasures to fight for survival. At this time, 9 teams had occupied the lake. These 9 teams had around 70 or 80 people. Each team was quite far from each other. The momentum of the warriors of these 9 teams burst out while their secret treasures showed brilliantly. They were all coldly watching the periphery area of the lake. There were 3 teams in the center of the lake. Each team had 2/3 sky of Sky Realm warriors. These people didn't hide their strength at this time, but instead they spread out all of their mighty power, using their strength to warn those who were snooping outside the lake like tigers stalking their prey. The 3 teams in the center of the lake were the most powerful in the entire ancient city. These 3 teams firmly grasped the lake's center, released a strong momentum, hauled out their secret treasures, and coldly looked at others around them. The other 6 teams were going around the edge of the lake. Each of these teams had second sky of Sky Realm warriors. Each of them was holding a secret treasure. Among these 6 teams, 3 teams were facing the attacks of other warriors around the outside of the lake. These 3 teams only had 1 second sky of Sky Realm warrior each, and thus their strength was relatively weak. And also because of that, warriors outside the lake all spotted these 3 teams' positions and wanted to occupy them. The warriors of these 3 teams in the lake cast out their full strength, using their strongest power to kill the provocateurs next to them, which terrified other oncoming warriors. The 3 other teams, which were also quite strong, were not the same as those with the 3rd sky of Sky Realm warriors who were calmly sitting in the center of the lake. They instead all stood up and secretly stayed on alert, carefully looking around. Among them, there were the Heavenly Palace's Ningli Ningzai, 2 other Skyrim warriors, and another 5 warriors in similar Heavenly Palace costumes. They all stood together, revealing a cold sneer on their faces. The secret treasures in their hands flashed with horrible power. They looked like they were going to discharge their full fatal power at any moment. The group of Aaya, Kai, Chishao, and the others stayed in the lake's periphery area and didn't dare to enter the key ground as they were afraid of being involved in this chaotic fight. Next to the lake, more than 10 dead bodies were dripping with blood. They were all killed in the fight. Around the lake, the brutal fight was still going on. Some teams won from time to time, killing the warriors of the teams in the lake, and then got into the lake. These new teams that had just settled in the lake were immediately faced with other teams wanting to challenge their position. Death at this moment became incredibly easy. Ningzai obviously saw Kai and Aaya. However, at this moment, Ningzai and the others didn't come out of the lake to deal with Kai and Aaya. They just coldly looked at Kai and Aaya as if they wanted to see the beasts tear those girls to pieces. Why hasn't Shurian come yet? Zwusher looked at the fight in the lake and secretly clucked her tongue while her eyes displayed a trace of panic. All of these people are crazy. If it keeps going like this, more than half of the number of these warriors will kill each other and die even before all the beasts come. Since Shurian is that confident, nothing will happen to him. Zwusher, there is no need to be worried. That kid is not an ordinary person. Qi Shao lifted a corner of his mouth and said, "In only a few years, that kid has already reached the third sky of Nirvana realm. I don't know how he cultivated so fast. Sai, I thought that you were superior enough, but compared to this kid, you're still a bit inferior to him. Zwisher, let's see if you dare not to do your best later." Zwisu stared at her. Boom! A warrior was struck away by a top-class warrior in the lake. His body suddenly burst out, and blood splashed everywhere. Qi Shao raised his eyebrows and then swung up his arm. A cluster of white smoke drifted, wiping the shower of blood and smashed flesh aside. It's horrible. People here are stronger than those in our merchant union. The merchant union is still a safe place. Since we came here, we have lost too many people. If we are attacked and killed here, it would be tragic, Zwisu sadly sighed. Zwisher also nodded, sticking out her tongue and resentfully saying, "You both shouldn't have asked to come here. We wouldn't have lost so many people." After listening to what she had said, Qi Shao let out a sigh. "Shiryan is here!" Aya suddenly screamed out. Chao Yi, Qi Shao, and the others hastened to turn their heads. An enormous gray tornado slowly approached from the distance. Dozens of corpses floated in the tornado, swinging and swaying in accordance with the tornado. Behind the gray tornado, more than 10 beasts rushed over while howling. Although they were letting our ear-splitting growls, they didn't dare to enter the tornado. In the tornado, Shiryan showed an emotionless face, revealed a wicked smile, and coldly looked at the beasts that were surrounding him. But he didn't feel scared at all. "Come on, another powerful man is coming. It seems that we will have fewer and fewer chances to have a spot here. Who is that little rascal? It seems that I have never met him before. Does he belong to one of the 7 ancient factions? Nonsense. If he is not a person from one of the 7 ancient factions, how come he is this powerful?" Warriors surrounding the lake also noticed Shiryan hiding in the tornado. Seeing dozens of corpses floating in the tornado and many beasts staying outside the gravitational field without daring to jump into it, those warriors all displayed a frightened face and clambered up. No one could blame them for being scared. Those corpses and the beast's attitude were enough to explain the problem. Even though it seemed that Shiryan was only in the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm, he displayed a momentum that brought people fear. In the gray tornado, which was 100 meters away, where twisted energies blended thrillingly. Anyone could see how powerful that gravitational field was. Seeing Shiryan heading their direction, the warriors who were outside the lake hesitated before quickly stepping aside. They didn't dare to block his way. Even the 3 most powerful teams in the center of the lake also noticed Shiryan. Those 3rd sky of sky realm all had their eyes locked on Shiryan. Ning's face suddenly changed. Watching Shiryan coming, he quickly informed the people around, "That's him." Listening to Ning's word, the eyes of another Heavenly Palace's warrior who was in the 2nd sky of sky realm brightened up, staring at Shiryan. "Damn it. It seems that our position will be lost again. This little rascal is extremely powerful. One of the other 6 teams on the side of the lake will definitely be out of luck. Yes, this time is really unlucky. If we can't get into the lake soon, aren't we going to be torn apart by those beasts? Wait for the opportunity. As long as we have a ray of hope, we will immediately drill into the lake. Let that bastard pass by smoothly unless you want to lose your life." They all displayed aggressive and unfearful faces. In this cruel situation, they would do anything for their lives. "Shiryan, we are here," Zwisher waved her hand. Her pretty face was full of joy. In the gravitational field, Shiryan sneered and controlled the gravitational field moving toward Zwisher's group of people. Seeing him approaching Zwishu's group, the warriors around cursed and instantly gave way to Shiryan's oncoming gray tornado. The 3 most powerful teams of warriors all looked at Shiryan, who was rapidly approaching. When he got closer, they had a quick glance at him and immediately displayed a trace of horror on their faces. From a short distance, they could see the storm of the gravitational field and the chaotic forces interweaved in one place, resulting in a very terrible move. They were not sure if they could get out of that gravitational field safe and sound after jumping into it. The 100-meter-high gray tornado wrapped Shiryen and dozens of corpses while slowly moving forward. As soon as the beasts behind the tornado saw many warriors gathering, they didn't care about life or death and rushed over to the warriors who were lagging behind. There were dozens of beasts which were not really the main force. However, more beasts that had been lagging behind were on their way. The situation was getting more and more dangerous. After Shiryen had arrived, he left the gravitational field fixed outside the small lake. He suddenly knitted his eyebrows, looking at the 9 teams of warriors in the lake. After having had a quick glance at Shiryen, the faces of the warriors of those 9 teams slightly changed. They were all vigilant as Shiryen was staring at them. "You guys." Shiryen threw them a look, grinned, pointed to the Heavenly Palace's team of Ningzhe, and said, "You guys come out. Leave that position for us." Ningzhe's face became cold. The face of the middle-aged man with the second sky of Sky Realm cultivation base also changed. "Aya and Sai, they're our goal." Shiryen pointed to Ningzhe's group and coldly said, "We don't have much time. After killing them, we can sit and rest for a while." Aya, Kai, Qishao, and the others all nodded. Chapter 393, Defeated. Chapter 393, Defeated. As soon as Shiryen finished talking, he instantly controlled the gravitational field, moving it directly towards Ningzhe's group in the lake. In the center of the lake, seeing the gravitational field coming, the 3 powerful teams of warriors suddenly displayed grave faces with their eyes stuck on Shiryen. In the gravitational field, there was a mixture of different powers. The more kinds of powers it had, the more intimidating the gravitational field would become. Although Shiryen only had a cultivation base of 3rd sky of Nirvana realm, the energy in that gravitational field was extremely mighty, enough to terrify even a Sky Realm warrior. Sure, Yen was hiding in the gravitational field and suddenly flew out when it got closer to Ningzhe's group. Each gold silk in the gravitational field abruptly spread out crazily. Golden lights twisted with each other and filled the space up fast. The faces of Ningzhe's team changed dramatically. Being the Heavenly Palace's warriors, they were obviously aware of how powerful the golden silks were. Even though they used golden silks to cultivate, they could only control their own golden silks. If others cultivated them, they could be lethal to them too. Therefore, seeing the gravitational field that contained the golden silks rushing over, the people of Ningzhe's group quickly dodged it. "Little rascal, you do whatever you want, but don't come near us. Otherwise, don't blame us for joining forces to kill you." In the center of the small lake, a warrior of 3rd sky of Sky Realm with a face full of scars suddenly stood up after he saw the gravitational field coming closer and closer. He grunted coldly and spoke up to warn Shiryen. Sitting on the ground, the other 3rd sky of Sky Realm warriors also coldly looked at Shiryen with darkened faces. The lake was not large, while the gravitational field that Shiryen controlled occupied a lot of space. Once the gravitational field stormed into the lake, it would affect and severely injure all the warriors inside it. Shiryen smiled indifferently, nodded, and said, "No worries. We just want a place in the lake. We will not mess with you." There were 9 teams in the lake. 3 of them had warriors at the 3rd sky of Skyrim. If he irritated them, he knew that the consequences would not look good. Therefore, he still controlled the gravitational field carefully, letting it move forward at a very slow speed. For those teams, as long as Shiryan's group had the ability to replace Ningzhe's group and didn't affect them, they would not intervene. They would not mind if the people of Ningzhe's group were alive or dead. "You are too contemptuous." The face of the middle-aged second sky of sky realm warrior in Ning Zay's group became cold. He suddenly grunted and moved aside to avoid the gravitational field, which was getting close as he rushed out of the lake. Seeing that man take action, Ning Zay and the others in his group also knew that they had to make a move to avoid the gravitational field. Involving themselves in a fight with Shi Yan could hopefully help them secure a firm position in the lake. That man slightly moved as the others in Ning Zay's group hesitated a little, and then suddenly rushed out as well from the lake, turning into electric lights that struck in the direction of Qi Xiao and Aiya. "Finally, you're getting out," Shi Yan sneered coldly in his heart. He waited for Ning Zay's group to get out from the lake to drill them into the gravitational field. The formerly slow gravitational field instantly became extremely violent, and its spinning speed became very fast, quickly covering the 3 Heavenly Palace's warriors. Those 3 warriors had just gotten out of the lake. They didn't think the gravitational field could get any faster. Thus, a slight carelessness had let them suffer the strong pulling force towards the center of the gravitational field. Each golden silk wrapped and tied them up in a short time. In just one breath, among ear-splitting screams, the 3/3 sky of Nirvana realm warriors had been crushed into pieces and then violently driven up by the gravitational field, turning into smashed pieces of flesh. Other warriors who were watching in the distance felt cold in their hearts. They looked at Shi Yan with terrified faces and subconsciously moved backward, distancing themselves from this gravitational field. Qi Xiao let out a big scream. A lot of smoke diffused from his body, covering a range of 10 meters around him. In this thick smoke, bursts of violent energy fluctuations consistently came out one after the other. Qi Xiao was in the smoke, raising his hands and releasing a silver band. This ribbon split out in the air, shining brilliantly, and instantly wrapped a Heavenly Palace's warrior at the second sky of Sky Realm, pulling him into the thick smoke. Aiya's and Kai Yi's faces became cold. That great pervaded money and a cluster of rings flew out together from these 2 girls' hands, covering Ning Zay and the other 2 Heavenly Palace's warriors in the bright luster. Shi Yan burst into a crazy laughter. The negative forces spread all over his body while his momentum increased significantly. Inside numerous starlight spots, he shifted toward Ning Zay and released a blow of the life seal that struck Ning Zay. Ning Zay coldly harumphed. He didn't believe that Shi Yan, who was only in Nirvana realm, could have the real strength to fight against him. He used his hand to cover the 3 green thumb rings on his hands. Instantly, 2 of them flew out as a strong soil element force also followed along. It seemed that thumb rings could stir up the earth power in heaven and earth. In the vortex, a vast, magnificent earth intent domain burst out from the 3 thumb rings. Crystal profound chi from Ning Zay's fingertips poured into those 3 thumb rings, enhancing their earth intent domain's power, which made them release an extremely violent energy movement that started to attack Shi Yan. All objects had a spirit. The intent domain of Shi Yan's life seal, which involved the vitality of all spirits in heaven and earth, suddenly crashed into the 3 thumb rings. Boom! 2 kinds of violent energy movements, which contained different martial intent domains, collided. The impact of that collision discharged beautiful, bright lights like fireworks, which shocked the other people. Life was unprincipled. Every creature had its own uniqueness. As long as the creatures had consciousness, life would become its most valuable asset. When this life seal was released, some lives of human beings and beasts became vaguely visible. These living forms were exposed differently from this life seal, and then split the fundamental earth intent domain of those 3 thumb rings. They separately pushed the soil element force of those 3 thumb rings aside, preventing them from continuously using the earth's power. Although Shi Yan was only in the Nirvana realm, his comprehension of the life intent domain seemed to be more profound than Ning Zay's enlightenment of the land conception. This supernatural, profound meaning originally didn't distinguish the level of a warrior's strength. The high or low concept of an intent domain entirely depended on how a warrior understood the realm. After having entered this marvelous world, Shi Yan was still fighting. At the critical point of life and death, although he was not afraid of death, he still tried to save his own life. His understanding regarding the desire to live of every living creature obviously suited with the innate character of the life seal's intent domain. After having gone through the rampage and using the power imposed by the life seal, Shi Yan was already stronger than Ning Zay. His comprehension of intent domain was a little more profound than Ning Zay's. Thus, the intimidation of this life seal naturally had the upper hand. The life seal determinately split Ning Zay's intent domain and covered the 3 thumb rings light. When the life seal submerged the 3 thumb rings, the energy inside the life seal also drilled towards Ning Zay. Ning Zay's intent domain became inferior and his confidence was damaged. The life seal struck his whole body and sent him flying. While he was still in the air, his body produced crackling sounds. His body's bones didn't seem to be able to bear this blow and suddenly cracked open. Ning Zay's body was covered with blood even before landing. His face was totally pale and his spirit was greatly weakened. So this is what Sky Realm is like. Shi Yan sneered coldly. Your comprehension of martial intent domain is still shallow. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to crush you while I am only in the Nirvana realm. If your intent domain hadn't dissipated, your 3 thumb rings could have still condensed the Earth's power, and thus it would not be easy for me to hurt you. Tui. Ning Zay suddenly spewed out a mouthful blood. His spirit was totally subdued. Not only did Shi Yan use the life seal to bombard Ning Zay, but he also used words to destroy his will. If a warrior wanted to display his full strength, self-confidence was essential. When a person could not believe in himself, he could hardly release all of his power, even though he still had enough strength. Ning Zay was feeling self-doubt. Shi Yan used words to attack and destroy Ning Zay's confidence, giving him thoughts of being inferior to Shi Yan. Once this kind of thought appeared in Ning Zay's mind, it would be difficult for him to exert all of his strength. He tried to protect himself, but failed because his defensive, profound qi became chaotic all of a sudden. Ning Zay's chaotic, profound qi allowed the impact of Shi Yan's life seal to burst out inside his body, making more of his bones explode. At this moment, Ning Zay couldn't help but spit out a mouthful blood. His whole body was exhausted. Spurting blood meant that Ning Zay no longer had any confidence. This blow affected not only this fight, but also the rest of his life. Seeing Ning Zay falling on the ground and spitting out a mouthful blood because of Shi Yan's words, the third sky of Sky Realm warriors in the lake all shook their heads, knowing that Ning Zay was totally screwed. They all looked at Shi Yan with grave seriousness. Most of the warriors could destroy a person's body. However, destroying a person's will require accumulating momentum, great wisdom, and a determined and ruthless mind. Shi Yan was the type of person who had absolute self-confidence. Moreover, he firmly believed that he was better than anyone and was not easy to yield to other people because of any difficulties. This kind of warrior was the most terrible. You are not my match. Shi Yan displayed a cruel face as he calmly walked toward Ning Zay. He was not hurried to take action, but continued his degrading words. Ning Zay's face looked horrified. He blankly sat there with a confused look while his mind was panicked. Chapter 394, The Insight Battle. Chapter 394, The Insight Battle. Most of the warriors looked at Ning Zay, quietly shook their heads, and let out a sigh. They seemed to know that Ning Zay's life was going to end in tragedy. Poor you. You obviously have a cultivation base of first sky of Sky Realm, but lost to the hands of a Nirvana realm warrior. It is said that you are a rare, talented warrior of the Ning family in the Heavenly Palace. But since you couldn't bear this kind of blow, how did you break through the Sky Realm? Ha ha ha. Or maybe you have taken spiritual pellets, using a significant number of spiritual pellets to pave the way to reach this realm based on the stroke of luck? How nice. He was such a ruthless guy. In the center of the lake, a group of third sky of Sky Realm warriors was watching Shi Yan approaching. Sure, Yan seemed not in a hurry to take action, but instead he continued urging Ning Zhe. They all revealed odd faces and were secretly vigilant. Shi Yan kept ridiculing Ning Zhe, while the latter's face was getting even paler. His eyes expressed a trace of confusion. At this moment, he didn't have any more self-confidence left. He kept thinking about how to escape from this cruel person. It was over. Seeing Ning Zhe's eyes change, the surrounding warriors realized that his death was inevitable and let out a long sigh. The fact that a warrior didn't even dare to continue to fight and just wanted to escape meant that he had lost his spirit and couldn't run away. Indeed, Shi Yan immediately released the life and death seal. The life seal and the death seal, which contained the life and death intent domain, overlapped in the air and fully covered Ning Zhe, bombarding all of his escapes. With all of his escapes blocked, Ning Zhe became desperate, and his will of survival was affected by the life and death intent domain, giving him the fear of his imminent death. Ning Zhe died. When the life and death seal covered him, Ning Zhe barely condensed the defensive force, and thus couldn't stop the life and death seal's impact. Bang! The life and death seal drilled into Ning Zhe's body, which then produced an earth-shaking, explosive sound. His whole body burst out, exposing bones and flesh, and was finally crushed into small pieces. Slowly walking towards Ning Zhe and feeling his aura passing, Shi Yan grumbled with a cruel grin and was secretly proud of his actions, although he knew that Ning Zhe had died innocently. If Ning Zhe weren't scared and hadn't lost his self-confidence, Shi Yan would have had to urge out more power, enhancing his level from the first sky to the second sky, to be able to kill Ning Zhe. However, because of Ning Zhe's own reasons, which were losing his will and being unable to display his full strength, Shi Yan had an opportunity to kill him easily. This battle made Shi Yan aware of the importance of a warrior's momentum. Not only that, he now had a deep understanding of one's willpower and the intent domain. After this battle, he knew why it was difficult to challenge a stronger opponent. The gap between their realms was too far, and thus the weak side would have a feeling of being inferior to the other side. With this mentality, it was even harder for the weak side to perform their full power. People with higher realm naturally had stronger self-confidence. This self-confidence would let their power reach the supreme state. If it continued like that, the strong would get stronger, and the weak would get weaker. Thus, nothing unexpected would happen. If the weak wanted to challenge the strong, they first had to overcome their own mentality. Only if they had absolute confidence could they win the battle without being affected by the opponent and display their full power. With this mentality and a strong will, a warrior could even reach out of his comfort zone and handle the stronger opponent. Shi Yan had benefited a lot from ordinary battles before. However, this was the first time he understood that in combat it was not only about strength and fighting, but also about the battle of wits. Sometimes the fearless momentum could make up for the lack of strength. With this understanding, Shi Yan looked at the third sky of Sky Realm warriors in the small lake, and a subtle change suddenly lit up in his eyes. When those guys had given him a warning before, he had secretly been alert and had a thought of not irritating those people. Because of that concern, his momentum had been weakened a little bit, as if he actually was much weaker than them. However, after the battle with Ning Zhe, his understanding had reached a totally new realm. He suddenly felt cheerful, as his wisdom seemed to have risen to another level. With his tenacious nerves, through this insight, Shi Yan now had an extremely arrogant self-confidence. At this moment, even if a god realm came, he would not be scared, nor let his momentum weaken just because of his opponent's mightiness. Even the idea of rebellion was not born yet. The warriors in the small lake quietly watched him and realized that his eyes were changing. Shi Yan's eyes now didn't show any fear, but a trace of arrogance instead. These warriors slightly knitted their eyebrows. Compared to Shi Yan, who was only in the Nirvana realm, they were one level higher. However, in the fight with them, Shi Yan would not be scared now just because of their higher realm. Ningzhe is dead. If you leave me outside, I will not be nice to you either. Shi Yan turned around towards Qi Zhao's direction, shouted and moved to Zuosher's position. Let's get in. Zuosher was the only one who wasn't involved in the battle. She knew that she couldn't help and could also become a liability for others. Thus, she had quietly hidden in the crowd, not letting Ningzhe and the other Heavenly Palace's warriors draw their attention to her. Her move was undoubtedly smart. It was because of her cleverness that Shi Yan, Aya, and the others could freely take action without worrying about her to be attacked by the two Heavenly Palace's warriors. In the crowd, Zuosher hadn't watched her master Qi Xiao and her grandfather fight in the battle. Instead, she stared at Shi Yan when he had calmly killed Ningzhe. Many warriors were surrounding them and had observed the battle. As for Zuosher, through this battle, she also understood a lot about momentum and the role of the mind. Hearing Shi Yan shout, Zuosher gently smiled while her eyes were full of aura, displaying an amazing spirit. You are such a bad guy. Your mouth is harsh as well. Otherwise, that guy wouldn't have died as soon as he did. Shi Yan grinned and said, It is just because that guy hadn't experienced too many brutal tribulations. If he couldn't even bear my provoking words, he deserved to die. While talking, Shi Yan stepped into the small lake. At the same time, the gravitational field began to move again, slowly backing out of the lake, moving aside and creating a channel for him. Beside the lake, many warriors were silently watching them. They saw the channel revealing, but didn't dare to enter first, and could only helplessly watch Shi Yan, together with Zuosher, walk into it. They even actively gave him the way because they were afraid of accidentally making him misunderstand their motives. Shi Yan took Zuosher to enter the lake while hauling out some demon crystals, giving them to her and saying with a smile, You shouldn't worry too much. Use those demon crystals to restore your strength. He had soon realized that the three people of Zuosher's group hadn't restored their profound qi yet. Since they had left the stone fortress and come here, their body strength was not at their peak states. When the three demon crystals emerged, Zuosu and Qi Xiao felt very jealous, as they wanted to grasp those three demon crystals. They had experienced many difficulties in the gravitational field, but didn't have any demon crystals in their hands. Otherwise, since they had been staying in the stone fortress for such a long time, they should have restored their profound qi to the peak. Sure enough, when Zuoshai received those demon crystals, her eyes suddenly lit up while she exclaimed in shock, So many demon crystals! Shi Yan smiled and shook his head, knowing that his guess was right. Recover yourself nicely. When your grandfather and Qi Xiao come here, you can give them these demon crystals so that they can reach their peak as well. Thank you. You are really loyal. You don't forget your old friends. Zuosher threw a glance at him while her small face was beaming with a beautiful smile. Since you left the Merchant Union, we didn't hear any news from you and even thought that you have already forgotten us. Grandfather Shi was still asking us if we had any news from you. In fact, I thought that you were ungrateful. Well, I forgive you now. Zuosher seemed to resent him a little bit. She took this opportunity to pour out everything that was on her mind. Shi Yan looked stunned and then suddenly whined, I am really ruthless. I have disappointed the Shi family. After having entered the Endless Sea, he had rarely thought about the Merchant Union and the Shi family's relatives. After having come to this Grace mainland, he had experienced a lot of things met a lot of people. But the person who was sincerely nice to him and considered him a loved one was only the Shi family's elder, Shi Jian. The Shi family had been much help to him. After having realized that he had potential traits, they had even persuaded him to leave the merchant union, advising him to go to the endless sea to pursue his own future. Right now, hearing Shi's words, he felt ashamed at heart and couldn't stop thinking about the experiences he had in the merchant union. He then determined that one day when he had enough strength, he would help the Shi family so that they would become a ruling force and have a broad future, not just a small force in the merchant union anymore. We give up. I will give you this position. At this time, the voice of the heavenly palace's second sky of Sky Realm Warrior came up from that thick smoke. After seeing other people around him perishing one after another, he knew that it was difficult to defeat Shi Yan's group. Thus, he finally decided to give up. Once he gave up, those heavenly palace warriors who were fighting with Aiya and the others hurriedly stopped and gathered to his side. We still have a chance. That man looked solemn as he pointed to some other teams in the lake and said, "We can't keep this position, but we can still take from someone else's. It's not only them in the lake." At the edge of the lake, there were 5 teams of warriors remaining. Hearing that man speak, their faces suddenly changed, and they all put their guards up. "That's very good," Shi Yan said, and then nodded toward Qi Shao and the others. "Since they are smart, we should not cruelly kill them all. No need to waste our strength. Let's get in and rest. It's good to watch them fight and die while we are still alive." Hearing Shi Yan's words, Qi Shao, Aiya, and Kai simultaneously nodded and came together. As soon as they got into the lake, Shi Yan suddenly controlled his mind to divert the gravitational field and put it in front of them. Therefore, if any warrior wanted to kill them, they had to face the gravitational field first. The gravitational field was indeed a barrier that prevented the warriors from making them fearless, and thus stopping them from considering Shi Yan's group as their target. Chapter 395, A Moment of Gasping for Breath. Chapter 395, A Moment of Gasping for Breath. The beasts outside the ancient city rushed into the lake's area. The warriors who were still outside the lake saw the beasts coming and knew that the situation now was critical. They didn't wait any longer and dashed towards the teams of warriors in the lake to launch their final attacks. Instantly, all kinds of secret treasures went rampant over the lake. Dazzling lights interweaved and formed a network of various violent, bursting tyrannical energy fluctuations. Shi Yan was sitting in the lake with the gravitational field in front of his people, making other warriors scared. No one was daring enough to pick Shi Yan's group as their target. Aiya, Kai, Laoli, and Laoluan relied on Shi Yan's power so that they could have some more time to breathe and take out their demon crystals to use the power inside to restore their profound qi. Qi Shao's Su and Zhuoshi were somehow having the same feeling of embarrassment. However, thanks to Shi Yan, the 3 of them now also had demon crystals in their hands to restore their strength and didn't need to worry about becoming the target of any other warriors in front of them. Seeing Shi Yan's group settled in the lake, the 3 most powerful teams in the center of the lake had no reaction. They gradually loosened their vigilance and then sat down again. These 3 most powerful teams in the center of the lake had third sky of Sky Realm Warriors who were sitting in front to protect them. Therefore, other warriors could only surround the lake from the outside and didn't dare to mess with them. They just tried to deal with the other 5 teams. Sitting in the lake, Shi Yan frowned and observed with a cold face. He watched the other warriors fighting and killing each other while he quietly controlled the gravitational field. The gravitational field was originally huge, but then silently separated into another smaller gravitational field. This small gravitational field slowly collected all the dead warriors from the battle. More than 10 dead warriors were pulled into the small gravitational field. The abundant aura from those bodies massively overflowed and poured into Shi Yan's acupuncture points. while others were desperately fighting. He took the opportunity to collect the dead warriors' bodies to enhance his own strength. So many people were fighting aggressively, and new warriors were killed every second. In the meantime, Yan could leisurely sit in the lake and not need to waste any of his strength, yet could still obtain a huge harvest. This trip to dark, magnetic, noxious mist was indeed the right choice. Yan coldly sneered inside his heart as he felt the influx of heaven and earth aura that suppressed his state of mind. He then began to notice the pain in his acupunctures, and somehow couldn't bear so many auras. He thus retrieved the gravitational field. It was not that he didn't want to continue collecting more auras, but he knew his own situation and that he shouldn't be too greedy. This place was abnormally dangerous, and if he fell into the possessed by the devil state because of his greed, the consequences would not be worth it. Giving up on collecting more auras of the dead bodies, he still vigilantly looked around only to see a bunch of warriors tragically dying and more beasts rushing over. Finally, hundreds of beasts stormed in like locusts. These beasts were like tigers stalking their prey, immediately starting to kill those warriors who were gathered outside the lake. At this moment, the fight outside the lake became brutal. The warriors not only had to face the other warriors in the lake, but they also had to cope with the influx of the beasts. More and more warriors outside the lake were attacked. Many of them were bitten and torn apart. Even their bones were swallowed. Although this small lake had a special effect in resisting the beasts, the warriors in the lake were still a little bit worried that the defensive power of this lake would suddenly disappear. With so many beasts gathering outside it, once the lake's defense was turned off, those warriors who were meditating would be bitten and swallowed in a short time. No one dared to take risks, and thus they all looked like they were encountering a pandemic. The brutal fight with a significant number of warriors and beasts finally ended after around 10 minutes. The Heavenly Palace's warriors also had the same result as Ning Zhe. They couldn't enter the lake at the end and were then replaced by other teams. They were all bitten and crushed into pieces, swallowed into the beasts' bellies. Soon, there was no one alive outside of the lake, leaving behind only pieces of bodies and almost 1,000 different types of beasts. Those beasts opened their bloody mouths, emitting a stingy, bloody smell from their sharp fangs. Their eyes coldly looked at the warriors in the lake, but didn't dare to rush at them. They just surrounded the lake without leaving. It seems that this small, silver lake is indeed the only way to survive. Aya frowned and softly let out a sigh. Poor warriors who couldn't come in here. All of them have suffered a tragic death. This dark, magnetic, noxious mist is really cruel. If we want to get the secret treasures, we have to exchange them for our lives. Kai, Yi, and Lao nodded simultaneously and displayed fearful faces. Yan, we have disturbed you this time. Without your gray tornado, we wouldn't have been able to take this position from the hands of the Heavenly Palace's people. Lao Li sincerely expressed his gratefulness and said, In that stone fortress, without you, we two brothers would have already. Lao Li and Lao Luan clearly understood that if it weren't for Yan's orders, the two girls, Aya and Kai, definitely wouldn't have brought them here. If they just relied on their feet, they wouldn't have made it to this small, silver lake. On the way, the two brothers gradually considered him as their true leader and began to admire as well as respect him. After this battle, the two of them honestly recognized him, unlike Aya and Kai, who had unkind thoughts. I knew what to do so that all of us could make it here, Yan revealed a faint smile. You and I have also experienced many things, and thus I have considered you guys as my friends. I cannot betray my friends. While speaking, Yan glanced at Aya and Kai. The eyes of the two brothers flashed up, and they secretly nodded. Aya's and Kai's faces looked unhappy. They both grunted. Don't be so happy. This is just those beasts' first attack. Storms, flames, wind, frost, and lightning are still here. This small lake can prevent the beasts, but it doesn't mean that it can block those disasters that come from the four mountains as well. Shiryan contemplated a little bit while his face didn't relax. We should all be careful. When those disasters get here, we should be well prepared. First thing is defense, so that these disasters cannot destroy us. Aiya and the others now looked tense again. Shiryan, how did you suddenly reach the third sky of Nirvana realm? Zwasher quietly stood up and laughed while gently walking to his side. I clearly remember that when we were in Deep Cloud's place, you were only in the disaster realm. Now, you are already in the third sky of Nirvana realm after only 7 or 8 years. Your cultivation is really fast. Qi Xiao and Zhuasu both looked at him. What? Kai Yi's graceful face slightly changed. Her eyes brightened up and looked at Yen sharply. You have reached Nirvana realm from disaster realm in only 7 to 8 years. The faces of Aiya and the two brothers also lost their color. They looked at him like they were watching a monster. Yen knitted his eyebrows and indifferently said, I was just lucky. Yen, why did you come here? Didn't you go to the Endless Sea to see the Yang family? Zhuasu was stunned for a moment and suddenly remembered something. That's right. Your great-grandfather told us that if we met you, we should encourage you to cultivate harder and not to let the Yang family's people look down on you. How was it in the Yang family? How did they treat you? Did you encounter anything unpleasant? The Yang family, Yen muttered a sentence, shook his head, and revealed a wry smile. I don't want to talk about this now, as it's impossible to tell you everything in just a short time. How is my great-grandfather? He is good. Currently, our Zhua family and Shi family are dominating the merchant union. The Baiming family, Mo family, and Ling family have almost been destroyed. The warriors of these 3 great families have cleared out. Their strengths have significantly decreased in the merchant union. Thus, all the new warriors have joined either the Zhua family or the Shi family. Su smiled. Thanks to you, the 2 families could become the dominators in the merchant union. You didn't encounter any difficulties? Yen asked casually. The smile on Zhuasu's face stiffened while his eyes showed a trace of sadness. He said, We didn't encounter big troubles. However, the Fire Empire and the God-blessed Empire gave us a lot of pressure. The fight between these 2 countries was spreading and affecting the merchant union. They wanted to borrow our forces and didn't want us to be neutral. Evidently, they most likely won't let us live in peace. In Deep Cloud's place, there were the Fire Empire, the God-blessed Empire, and the Merchant Union. Among them, the Merchant Union was considered the weakest. After Baiming family, Mo family, and Ling family were wiped out, the number of Merchant Union warriors was not enough. Thus, they were not able to face the intimidation from these 2 empires and let them harbor wicked intentions. Listening to what Zhuasu had said, Yen raised his eyebrows, nodded calmly, and said, When we have time, I will find a way to help you deal with the threat of the Fire Empire and the God-blessed Empire. However, this has to wait until after we leave this dark, magnetic, noxious mist. The Endless Sea also has many troubles. Listening to Yan's words, Zhuasu and the other people displayed a curious look. However, since Yen didn't say anything further, they didn't pry for more information. You guys shouldn't keep talking about old stories. Trouble is coming again. Ai suddenly spoke up, interfering with their conversation. She pointed to the intensive lightning area ahead and said, The lightning over there will come here first. We should think about how to deal with the incoming lightning. A bunch of lightning was meandering and twisting in the air like electric snakes. In the dazzling electric lights, the lightning was coming closer and closer. Whatever the lightning passed through, stone fortresses below all exploded and stone rubble splashed everywhere. Look at the sky. A third sky realm warrior in the center of the lake suddenly screamed out in surprise. Yen subconsciously raised his head up to look at the sky. In the area where the two rivers interweaved, ancient corpses piled up, vaguely forming a bridge which extended to the small lake and gradually descended into the lake. Violent fluctuations came in from those dazzling lights. Many colorful beams of lights, which looked as if there were fishes inside, were twisting and meandering. With a closer look, people realized that the lights were actually swords, armors, jade hairpins, jade stones, all kinds of secret treasures. Those are the secret treasures. The warriors in the lake screamed boisterously with excitement. All of them were ready to grab the secret treasures. In the center of the lake, 6 of the third sky of Sky Realm warriors stood up one by one, raised their heads up as they threw a quick look at the movement above, and then immediately stared at Sher Yan's group with cold eyes. They obviously didn't have good intentions. Chapter 396, Mountain and River Seal. Chapter 396, Mountain and River Seal. Be careful. Qi Zhao's face slightly changed. He subconsciously gathered his strength, as his 5 fingers contracted and a flow of hazy smoke gently flew out from his fingernails like a spiritual snake. Aya and Kai tensed up. From a distance, they were observing the storm, lightning, flames, and frost gradually approaching. They were also watching out for the other teams of warriors in the small lake, as they were afraid that they would take any explosive action to obtain the secret treasures. The energy fluctuations at the point where the 2 galaxies interweaved above everyone's heads were getting more and more violent. It seemed like countless different energy traits at that weaving point had begun to have some unusual changes. The floating ancient corpses were affected by the energy from that center weaving point and started to sink slowly. These corpses formed a ladder which started from the sky and gradually fell closer to everyone's heads. The ladder that these ancient corpses have formed should have reached that energy weaving point. Wait until that ladder descends. Then these 3 teams of warriors will compete for the opportunity to go up. Aya took out a dark purple stone, on which a mysterious pattern looking like a network of mountains and rivers was engraved. The breadth of the intent domain had fully covered those crisscrossing rivers. The stone seal in her white hand vaguely scattered purple lights. The pattern engraved on the stone was very lively. In those purple lights, mountains and rivers looked like they were being revived, as they slowly started moving on the stone. Aya immersed her mind in the stone. Her whole body suddenly brought out a thorough intent domain. She poured her profound qi from her body into the stone to form a connection, and then gently said, "This mountain and river seal is a sacred level, secret treasure. When the disasters come closer, and the other 3 teams of warrior take action, I will immediately release this mountain and river seal. It can certainly hinder them for some time while we take the opportunity to climb onto that corpse bridge and go to the sky." As soon as Kai Laoli and Lao Luan saw her take out the mountain and river seal, their eyes all lit up. It seemed that they also knew the use of this mountain and river seal, as their faces were clearly startled. Sher Yan glanced at Aya and secretly nodded, as he knew that this girl at this moment seemed to understand the great picture and finally used her hidden means. Aya came from the White Emperor City and was said to be the daughter of the Castellan of the White Emperor City. From Kai and Laoli, he knew that the Castellan of the White Emperor City had an extremely profound cultivation base. Aya was his daughter, so the fact that she had strong secret treasures didn't surprise Sher Yan at all. During this journey, since he had started to lead this team, Aya had become more relaxed than before. She had deliberately hidden her real power in many fights, as well as used many secret treasures to deal with enemies. The fact that she decided to use the mountain and river seal this time meant its power was strong. Everyone must be careful. If Aya releases the mountain and river seal, as long as you spot the opportunity, do not hesitate. Sher Yan looked at Qi Xiao, Zhua Shi, and Zhua Su. The 3 people of Aya's group also came from the White Emperor City, so they knew the magical effect of this mountain and river seal. However, Qi Zhao's group didn't. Shi Yan was worried that they didn't know the situation well enough to grasp the opportunity later. Therefore, he had to tell them in advance. Qi Zhao's group slightly nodded with solemn faces, indicating that they clearly understood what he said. Little Shi, stick to your master and do not stray away from him at any cost. Zhuosu lowered his voice and told Shi seriously, if you are separated from your master, you have to rely on Shi Yan. You are the weakest, so no need to try your hardest. Your most important task is to keep your own life. Qi Xiao had a cultivation base of second sky of Sky Realm and was considered the strongest one among them. Zhuosu and Qi Xiao had known each other for many years, and he also knew Qi Xiao's ability. He was confident that Qi Xiao would be able to protect Zhuoshi at the critical moment. As for Shi Yan, although it seemed that he was only in the Nirvana realm at first glance, when he brought out his strength, Zhuosu couldn't help but secretly praise him. Zhuosu was in the Nirvana realm as well, and he knew that he could hardly protect anyone else at a critical point in time. He couldn't entrust Zhuoshi's safety to Ai, Kai, or any of the others. That was why he had spoken these words. Don't worry, Grandpa. I will take good care of myself. Zhuoshi gently replied while her brightened eyes blinked. She continued to worry a little. Grandpa, you also have to be careful. The secret treasures are obviously precious, but you shouldn't risk your life. Although your cultivation is the top in the deep clouds place, your strength here is... Zhuosu revealed a wry smile, nodded, and didn't say anything. Actually, there was no excuse. The situation in this dark, magnetic, noxious mist was totally different than that of the deep clouds place. All of the warriors here had at least Nirvana realm cultivation base, and most of them were very young and outstanding. After coming here, Zhuosu was somehow a little bit sad, and for the first time he was aware of the fact that living in the deep clouds place was actually pitiable. He had a feeling like a frog sitting on the bottom of the well. Moreover, he had secretly made up his mind that once he got out of the dark, magnetic, noxious mist alive, he would certainly reconsider the future of the Zhuo family. He would open his eyes wider and no longer limit himself to a small place like the deep clouds place. While the people of Zhuosu's and Ai's group were talking, the corpse bridge was getting closer to everyone's heads, only about a few dozen meters away. At this moment, the three teams in the center of the lake couldn't control themselves anymore. Their eyes flashed with fierce lights, and they started to launch their attacks toward the opponent next to them. First, the three teams had only focused their powers on other teams who had third sky of Sky Realm warriors, because they considered them as their main threats. However, when they subconsciously looked at the disasters which were slowly coming their way, they began to pay attention to Shi Yan's group as well. The faces of Shi Yan, Qi Xiao, Ai, and the others became cold. Everyone tensed up. The distance between them and those disasters was getting closer. Shi Yan's group would probably be the ones who got hit first by the flames and storm. In case they had to resist the disasters and other warriors attacked at the same time, their situation would be extremely dangerous. Remember, pay attention to my actions. Ai said in a voice which only the people next to her could hear to inform her team. She was holding the mountain and river seal, which had turned to a strange, dark purple hue. The blood vessels in her hand had a thin strand of purple light, which flowed slowly into the mountain and river seal. Wearing. The sound of the storm was like the growl of a ferocious ghost, which came slowly and suddenly resonated. The first disaster to arrive was the storm. In the violent wind, the energy was like a surging tide that came along with the storm and quickly spread out over the lake. In the storm, strange lights flashed up like dazzling swords. That light carried a gleam of sharp coal with it. Seeing the invasion of the storm, the faces of the people on the 6 teams next to the lake darkened. They all hauled out their secret treasures and released their own defensive halos. Those warriors no longer hid their secret, defensive treasures as they put on their colorful armors that had special effects. Zhuo also put on her dragon turtle armor. This strange armor, which was made of a turtle shell, covered more than half of her tall body. Except for her 2 long legs, her entire body was covered. Her look was ridiculous, as the armor was as motionless and heavy as a mountain. Shi Yan was somehow surprised. He stared at her for a moment, nodded, and said, "It looks like in these years you have had a deeper understanding of this dragon turtle armor. That's good. Although it doesn't look very nice, its defense should be helpful." Zhuo's face reddened. She embarrassedly said, "Don't say anything more. I know this armor is ugly. I don't need you to remind me." Shi Yan was dumbfounded and then immediately turned his head, looking at the area above the gravitational field which was ahead of him. He began paying attention to the impact of that storm on the gravitational field. The storm massively covered the sky as rain poured down. It violently poured a kind of strange, twisting power into the gravitational field. When a part of the gravitational field came in contact with the storm, different mixed forces suddenly became unbearably chaotic. They seemed to be affected by the storm, which made the rotation speed decrease and even gradually slow down. Feeling cold in his heart, Shi Yan immediately realized that this moving storm could destroy the gravitational field. His face slightly changed. He didn't hesitate too much. Taking the opportunity when the storm wasn't completely in the gravitational field, yet to swing up his 2 hands in the air. Bursts of energy, fluctuations, discharged from his hands. The golden silks that mixed with the gravitational field were affected by the strange power from his 2 hands, turning into golden lights and disappearing into the storage ring on his finger. Within 3 short seconds, all the golden silks had been collected into the storage ring again. After the disappearance of the golden silks, the gravitational field, which he had built and had been working well, was finally filled with the power of the storm. In a blink of an eye, different kinds of energies that had condensed in the gravitational field were all stirred up by the storm's movement. The gravitational field then disappeared without a trace. Ha ha ha. In the center of the lake, a 3rd Sky of Sky Realm warrior coldly looked at Shi Yan for a short while before pouting his lips and saying, "One threat less." The fact that some of the strongest warriors in the lake had guarded against Shi Yan's group was because of the gravitational field. The strange power of the gravitational field and the existence of the golden silks had terrified those warriors and made them consider him as their greatest threat. Now that the gravitational field had disappeared and Shi Yan was only in the Nirvana realm, in their eyes his group was not strong enough to affect them. Their faces loosened as they no longer felt threatened by his group. At this moment, the purple lights of the mountain and river seal in Ya's hand suddenly rose to her head. Streams of purple lights scattered from the mountain and river seal, like small springs overflowing and spreading out, quickly filling the space above everyone's heads like a network. "Don't be hasty." Shi Yan's face suddenly changed. He couldn't help but shout. The purple lights of the mountain and river seal were like a small spring extending outward above the crowd's heads and overwhelming the space above the lake in a very short time. Ai took advantage of the mountain and river seal's change and screamed, "Everyone get ready!" Other warriors in the lake coldly looked at Ai, grunted, and focused their attention on her. Chapter 397, Viciousness. Chapter 397, Viciousness. Little girl, since you are asking for death, I will fulfill it for you. In the center of the lake, the scarred face of a 3rd Sky of Sky Realm warrior darkened as he suddenly launched a blow. A huge palm which was formed by the condensation of profound chi emerged in the sky, covering Aya. The center of the palm transmitted a strong suction force. Standing together with him was another 3rd Sky of Sky Ream warrior, who revealed a trace of disdain on his face. He slowly walked over with his left hand outstretched from his sleeve. With a speed which was as fast as lightning, he began releasing streams of light which condensed into a huge crystal python, dashing toward Shurian's group in an attempt to tear them apart. The corpse bridge in the sky finally fell to a climbable height. The faces of people of Shurian's group changed suddenly. They anxiously told AI to pay attention to this warrior. Seeing the warrior coming and forming a crystal python, Shurian and Kai didn't dare to hesitate and immediately started to take defense. Shurian, take good care of my little Shur for me. Qi Shao suddenly shouted out loud, and a gray ball flew out from his cuff. The thick fog inside of it also quickly spread out, then instantly gathered, forming a mist of gray smoke that blocked the incoming crystal python. Kai Yi's face was cold. She also discharged the round rings on her arm. A bunch of rings spanned in the air with dazzling lights, shooting sharp blades towards that crystal python. Zhuai Su, Lao Li, and Lao Luan were motionless while wearing solemn faces. They didn't dare to relax. The crystal python twisted its body and shook its head satisfactorily. It was around 10 meters long. The serpentine pattern on its body was very obvious. When this python flew over, it instantly spurted out a bunch of lights. Crystal light was like an all-conquering sword which pierced and destroyed the fog barrier that Qi Shao had put out and hit the rings that Kai Yi had discharged. The edge of the rings had many blades. When those rings hit the crystal light, their tracks were all changed, and they burst out in every direction. Kai Yi's face was pale as she was affected by the strike. Her entire body trembled as she moved back 3 steps. Her eyes suddenly darkened. At the same time, the other 2 teams of warriors in the lake also fought with each other and started to snatch the opportunity to climb onto the corpse bridge. AI, you released the mountain and river seal. Purple lights were constantly blinking on and off between her eyebrows. That bunch of purple lights and the mountain and river seal connected, making this seal turn into a purple stream that extended broadly and covered the entire lake in just a short time. A heavy momentum from that purple stream oppressed those under it down. All of the warriors in the lake were agitated and affected under this strong pressure, which brought them the feeling that it was impossible to destroy it. Shurian was no exception. That purple stream also had a big influence on the sea of consciousness. The mentality fluctuations from the mountain and river seal came out and spread through the purple stream, affecting all warriors in the lake. All of the warriors in the lake were under the influence of the mountain and river seal, making their sea of consciousnesses affected as well. Within a second of being distracted, their eyes looked dazed. AI suddenly flew away. She was as fast as lightning. While people were still in a daze, she was the first one who was able to come close to the stone ladder. Before others could react, she had already gotten on the stone ladder and quickly climbed onto the corpse bridge toward the weaving point. The 5 devils in Shurian's sea of consciousness suddenly woke up. On the edge of life and death, Shurian instantly restored his consciousness and saw Aya, who was now the first one climbing on the corpse bridge towards the weaving point in the sky. Damn it! Shurian couldn't help but curse. Ai had set them up. She didn't intend to go with other people in Shurian's group to the stone ladder. She had released the mountain and river seal that had attracted other teams to let Qi Shao and Kai Yi take action. She made use of Qi Shao and Kai Yi to give herself more time to release the power of the mountain and river seal. When the great hand seal of the warrior with the scarred face was released, it was instantly affected by the mountain and river seal and thus couldn't discharge all of its power. At the moment, when everyone's eyes looked dazed, AI had spotted the opportunity and released the greatest strength of the mountain and river seal, affecting everyone's sea of consciousness. She then took advantage of this moment to be the first one to climb the stone ladder. AI, you clearly didn't consider the other people of Yan's group her friends. In the past few days, she probably stayed with Yan's group, just to wait for this moment. She made use of Yan to attract the attention of other warriors, and thus borrowed them to deal with Yan's group. She then took the opportunity to rush to the corpse bridge. And she did it. AI quickly climbed the stone ladder. Below the mountain and river seal, a purple stream was formed and instantly condensed into a heavy defense barrier. Under the sky, the mountain and river seal formed a purple river, which became a new barrier that contained a large number of purple lights. When she rushed to the corpse bridge, the purple lights gathered with the ancient corpses at the bottom of the bridge. She didn't want anyone else to catch up with her. Such a malicious girl. The third sky of sky realm warrior with the scarred face secretly cursed her. When the great hand seal grabbed an ancient corpse which was nearest to everyone, it was smacked away, and thus the great hand seal couldn't snatch the ancient corpse nor crush the purple lights of the mountain and river seal. I didn't expect that you could think of such a way. Young generations like you guys are really cunning. The warrior who had condensed the crystal python looked at Yan, Qi Xiao, and Kai Yi with his cold eyes. That girl has already gone first. You guys are better off being buried with her. You should think a bit before deciding to take things for yourselves. In the small lake, some warriors were trying to destroy the purple stream barrier that the mountain and river seal had condensed. The others looked at Yan's group with an unfriendly attitude. That cheap girl. You WH asterisk re. B asterisk TCH. Kai E, Lao Li, and Lao Luan gritted their teeth and cursed while their faces looked extremely odd. AI had taken advantage of them without caring about their lives. She had spotted the opportunity and rushed to the corpse bridge, making them the target of other warriors. That was extremely vicious. The surrounding area couldn't destroy the purple stream that the mountain and river seal had created, and thus their rage was growing while their eyes shot out dazzling lights. The light seemed to resent that it couldn't devour and swallow them alive. The three people of Kai Yi's group and the others brought up Ya's ancestors and cursed all of them. Qi Zhao's and Zhuo Su's faces changed dramatically. They subconsciously moved backward, next to Zhuo, while their eyes looked very serious. A miserable scream suddenly came up. A Nirvana realm warrior at the edge of the lake, who was cruelly looking at Yan's group, was inadvertently blown away by the storm. In the storm, the warrior's body was broken into pieces, while his internal organs were all torn apart. His death was extremely miserable. Scourge had arrived. Everyone's faces changed dramatically. Those warriors who were at the edges of the lake increased the power of their defensive light to their peak. They moved towards the center of the lake to gather while continuing to concentrate their strength at the same time. The scene suddenly became chaotic. The warriors in this lake gritted their teeth and cursed, constantly striking the barrier that had been created by the mountain and river seal. Under the continuous impact of different kinds of secret treasures, the purple river seemed to be no longer able to resist as a crack started to gradually appear. Those secret treasures with extraordinary power continuously flew out from the third sky of sky realm warriors. Splendid lights in those secret treasures shot out towards the purple stream and drilled into the first ancient corpse, striking away the purple lights which were hovering around that corpse. If it continued like this, the barrier that the mountain and river seal had created would soon be destroyed. Under the abundant power of those secret treasures, even if it were the sacred level mountain and river seal, its spiritual aura would be drained and would become a piece of wasted rock. AI had risked one of her sacred level secret treasure to block everyone else, so that the upcoming disasters would engulf and kill them all. If her plan worked, then she could get the secret treasures which vaguely appeared in the sky for herself. She gave up the mountain and river seal, but she was still able to get more secret treasures. This had calculated everything very well. The mountain and river seal had Aiya's intent, domain, and power. Her father is a second sky of spirit realm warrior. Hence, it's not that easy to destroy the mountain and river seal. Kai gritted her teeth, resentfully. This bitch is vicious indeed. If I knew it, I would have killed her earlier. The faces of Lao, Li, and Lao Lu darkened. We have also been deceived. At this time, Shi Yan suddenly looked at other warriors in the center of the lake, frowned, and explained. As you have seen it, that girl has fooled us. Right now, everyone should not continue disputing anymore, but we should find a way to destroy this mountain and river seal. Shi Yan could see that these warriors were in a rage and had murderous intentions in their minds. If these warriors started to act crazy, even if he could protect himself, Qi Xiao, Zuo and others wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, in order to avoid the case where those warriors decided to start a frenzy, he had to speak out. I will not fight against you for now. Wait until I am out of danger. Then I will settle this with you. The warrior with the scarred face shouted with a cold face and then put his strength on bombarding the mountain and river seal. Prepare to cope with the incoming disasters. Shi Yan softly let out a sigh, nodded toward Qi Xiao and Kai Yi, and reluctantly used the star shield. Countless spots of starlight burst out and covered his entire body. What? Star shield? In the small lake, a middle-aged man with a dry yellow face and a rugged beard looked at Shi Yan in surprise while his eyes flashed up with strange lights. He screamed out loud, "Little kid, you also belong to our god sect?" Shi Yan was stunned. In a short moment, he didn't know what to say and just casually uttered, "What?" Chapter 398, The Northern Dipper Arrows. Chapter 398, The Northern Dipper Arrows. Little kid, you are one of the god sect's people. The middle-aged warrior, whose face was dry and yellow, looked at Shi Yan, shouted out loud while seeming to be excited. Sure, Yan was startled for a while, as he was deep in the thought about how to defend against these disasters. He didn't understand what that man meant, so he casually asked, "What?" "Are you one of the divine radiant cult's people, little rascal?" That big man grunted. His attitude was much better than before. Before, when he had looked at Shi Yan, he had resented that he couldn't kill him. However, right now, although he still cursed him little rascal, he didn't seem to have any wicked intentions. Shi Yan suddenly understood. I come from the Endless Sea, and I have the Star Martial Spirit. The three god sect in the Endless Sea is one branch of the god sect. So that's right. Without waiting for Shi Yan to finish his sentence, the man hurriedly screamed, "Come here. We need your star power. As long as you condense the Northern Dipper arrows and then integrate with my great sun power and moon power of Liu, we will be able to break the mountain and river seal's barrier." Beside him, a female warrior at the third sky of Sky Realm also nodded her head. This warrior, named Liu, of the Divine Radiant Cult, looked ordinary. Her body was extremely skinny. Her face was a little pale, as if she hadn't been exposed to the sun for a very long time. At the moment when she saw Shi Yan cast out the star shield, she was also a little startled. After realizing it was the star shield, she considered Shi Yan as her own family and also showed a better attitude on her face. Before seeing Shi Yan display the star shield, she had looked at Shi Yan with extreme, cold eyes. "A person of the divine radiant cult," Kai muttered with a low voice. Shi Yan was stunned. He thought for a while before he gently nodded. Walking over to Zuo, he held her hand and took her to the center of the lake. Zuo's eyes looked panicked. Her face was puzzled while Shi Yan was pulling her to the center of the lake. After a quick glance, Qi Xiao and Zuo looked very cheerful as they seemed to see through Shi Yan's mind. Zuo was only in the disaster realm. She had the lowest cultivation base here. If she stayed at the edge of the lake, she might not be able to withstand those disasters. Although the magnetic field around the Silver Lake slowed down the disasters a lot, according to what was going on right now, the disasters would soon come over. Sure, Yen took Zwisher to the center of the lake so that she could be the last to face those disasters. Perhaps by that time, the barrier that AI had created might have been broken already. Thus, she could have a chance to climb to the sky, avoiding those disasters. "Who is this girl?" The warrior with a yellow face frowned, and asked when he saw Shur Yen bringing Zwisher over. "My wife." Shur Yen revealed a faint smile, kept his normal face, and secretly held Zwisher's hand tightly. Zwisher originally had some resistance, and secretly blamed Shur Yen. However, when she glanced at Qi Shao and Zwisu and saw them let out a sigh of relief, she understood what was going on. Sure, Yen wanted to protect her. Zwisher was moved a little bit and stopped struggling. Instead, she became well-behaved and obediently followed Shur Yen. After hearing Shur Yen say that Zwisher was his wife, those warriors from the divine, radiant cult didn't say anything else. 5 of them even took the initiative to move to the side, leaving Shur Yen and Zwisher a small space. "Do you know how to perform the Northern Dipper arrows?" Li Yu asked. "No, I don't," Shur Yen shook his head. "How about using the star power to create star formation? Do you know them?" Li Yu asked again. "Star formation?" Shur Yan's eyes brightened up. He nodded. "I know how to perform it." "Very good. Release it quick. Zhao Feng and I will take care of the rest." "Hurry up!" The warrior with a yellow face named Zhao Feng also hastily urged Shur Yen. In the center of the lake, the 2 strongest teams seemed to know the secret technique of the divine radiant cult. After hearing the Northern Dipper arrows and the star formation, their eyes all brightened up and no one scolded Shur Yen anymore. They looked at Shur Yen with shining eyes. Under other people's scrutinizing looks, Shur Yen triggered his mind to activate the Star Martial Spirit, gathering a bunch of starlight dots. 7 groups of lights were formed above his head and then displayed themselves according to the formation of the 7 stars of the Northern Dipper. "Is this right?" Shur Yen asked with uncertainty. "That's it." Zhao Feng displayed a cheerful face and burst into laughter. A surge of scorching flame energy flowed out from his body in the radiant lights. A beam of scorching sunlight flew out and drilled into the 7-star formation. At the same time, moonlight also spread out from Li Yu's body. This beam of light, which was like the shining moonlight, also flew out from her hands, infiltrating the 7 stars formation. "Don't worry, we will take care of the rest," Li Yu told him in a carefree fashion. Shur Yen nodded. A group of sunlight, moonlight, and 7 groups of stars gathered in the 7 stars formation. Suddenly, a strong energy fluctuation stirred up, spreading out from the sunlight and the stars. This fluctuation and the 7 groups of stars that Shur Yen had released abruptly resonated. Under everyone's attentive looks, odd changes suddenly appeared on the 7 groups of stars that Shur Yen had released, turning them into a set of a bow and arrows. The sunlight from Zhao Feng and the moonlight of Li Yu merged to form a powerful arrow. That light arrow rode on the bow, which had been created from the condensation of the starlight. The bow was elongated. A violent energy fluctuation suddenly flowed out from the bow. The starlight instantly integrated with the light arrow. This light arrow, which brought along the starlight, terrifyingly shot out towards the ancient corpses at the bottom. Boom! When the light arrow hit a corpse at the bottom, the purple lights which were wrapped around the ancient corpse broke instantly. The mountain and river seal suspended above everyone's head, and its power seemed to have been struck and scattered. The mountain and river seal darkened and couldn't maintain its purple river to keep overflowing. All kinds of secret treasures flew out and collided with that mountain and river seal. The mountain and river seal slightly shook in the air as its spiritual aura got empty and it finally fell. "We're good." Zhao Feng laughed out loud and shouted, "We broke the barrier, so we must go first." Li Yu's face became cold. She looked at the warriors next to her and said, "You should understand the rule. Go up." Zhao Feng stared at a divine, radiant cult warrior next to him as he shouted to urge him. Under Zhao Feng's gaze, this warrior suddenly woke up and hurriedly rushed towards the stone ladder. Shi Yan was startled and then quickly gave Zuo a push. She staggeringly walked towards the corpse bridge and strenuously climbed while being shoved by the divine, radiant cult's disciples. When Zhao Feng and Li Yu saw what Shi Yan did, they just slightly knitted their eyebrows but didn't say anything. In their hearts, since Shi Yan belonged to the divine, radiant cult, he was like family, as his wife had a low cultivation base and moreover, staying in the lake was the most dangerous thing right now. They didn't oppose to what he did. Shi Yan, When Zuo climbed halfway onto the corpse bridge, she suddenly remembered something and couldn't help but shout while looking at Zuo and Qi Xiao in the distance. The disaster currently submerged Qi Xiao and the other people. Their entire bodies were now shining with dazzling lights as they were desperately struggling with miserable faces. Zuo couldn't just abandon her master and her grandfather. "Don't worry too much. You go up first, then we will talk later," Shi Yan shouted. The divine, radiant cult behind Zuo also frowned and urged her. She then reluctantly continued to climb toward the top. Not long after that, all of the divine, radiant cult warriors had climbed up. Zhao Feng and Li Yu simultaneously looked at Shi Yan and shouted together, "Hurry up. Little kid, don't waste others' time." What? Others are waiting for you." Zhao Feng stared at him. If it were somebody else, he would go right away. "You have the chance now. Why are you hesitating?" The warriors of the other two teams had come close to the center of the lake. From a distance, Qi Xiao and the others were now submerged in the disasters. Cold sweat beaded on their foreheads as they seemed to resist strenuously. If he went up now, perhaps Qi Xiao and Zuo would stay here forever. "I can wait for a while longer." Shi Yan sneered and moved backward. He looked at Zhao Feng and Li Yu and said, "You guys go first. I will catch up later." Zhao Feng and Li Yu were astonished and immediately scolded Shi Yan for not being wise. While muttering, the two of them stepped forward and then climbed on the stone ladder. "You too," Shi Yan shouted. "What else do you want?" "How troublesome," Zhao Feng angrily asked. "Please take care of my wife. We all come from the God sect. I will remember this favor." Shi Yan begged. Zuo had gone up, but he didn't know what was waiting for them up there. He couldn't be together with Zuo and was afraid that she would encounter some danger up there, so he could only beg Zhao Feng and Li Yu to help him take care of her. Zhao Feng coldly snorted and displayed an unhappy face. "Stinky little rascal, you are nonsense. If you don't come up here soon, you deserve to die because of your stupidity. There aren't many secret treasures, and if you are late, nothing will be left for you." While talking, Zhao Feng suddenly accelerated and gradually disappeared into the clouds. In the center of the lake, the other two powerful teams took advantage of this time and also went up to the corpse bridge, moving up along the bridge. Shi Yan suddenly turned his head and released the star shield. His entire body reddened. He then drilled into the center of the disasters. Lightning, flames, storms, and frost all swept over, covering the entire lake. These four strange forces, which came from the four mountains, seemed to have a terrifying destructive power that could break a variety of defense halos. The star shield produced crisp sounds under the effect of these four kinds of disasters, as if it could explode at any time. Under these four kinds of disasters, it was like Shi Yan was stuck in a deep pond of mud, walking staggeringly. At this time, he knew what Qi Xiao and the others were facing. "Hey!" A crazy roar came up as different strange powers burst out from his body. Shi Yan was now like a mighty tiger rushing towards Wasu and pulling him by one of his hands. Chapter 399 Lending a Helping Hand. Chapter 399 Lending a Helping Hand. Among everyone, Wasu only had the third sky of Nirvana realm, and he had just reached this realm. He couldn't even be compared to Lao Li and Lao Luan. He was thus the weakest one. Under the invasion of the 4 kinds of disasters, Wasu had to resist the hardest. His tattered clothes flashed up with blue lights. Under the impact of the 4 disasters, he seemed to have signs of being broken. With his cultivation base, it was hard for Wasu to survive in these disasters. Shi Yan rushed forward as one of his hands pulled Wasu's hand, shouted, and forcefully threw him out. A flow of strange power burst out. Shi Yan seemed to get infinite power at this moment. Although Wasu was shrouded by 4 kinds of disasters, Shi Yan could still throw him out towards the center of the lake. At the center of the lake, warriors of other teams were getting on the corpse bridge. As soon as Wasu landed at the center, he immediately followed these warriors to climb on the corpse bridge to the top without thinking too much. Chi Xiao had the second sky of Sky Realm cultivation base. Under the influence of the disasters, he still had a spare strength and was slowly moving towards the corpse bridge. After a quick glance, Shi Yan could see that even without external forces, he would still be safe. Shi Yan then made up his mind that it was not necessary to help Chi Xiao. While his body power skyrocketed, he walked step by step to the 2 brothers, Lao Li and Lao Lin. Seeing Shi Yan coming, the 2 brothers were overjoyed while their eyes instantly brightened up. Although the 2 brothers were also the warriors of the divine radiant cult, their realm was still slightly low, and they didn't have too many secret treasures. So they were encountering difficulties when facing the disasters. When Shi Yan came, the 2 of them thanked him, looking grateful. At this time, the 2 brothers realized that Shi Yan was much better than Aya. The fact that he didn't abandon his team members really made their hearts moved. "Go!" Shi Yan shouted. His 2 hands shook, and vast energy fluctuations instantly burst out from his arm. Each of Shi Yan's hands carried one of them. He immediately entered the second sky of Rampage, and now felt that his entire body somehow had the power that could be compared to that of a mighty third sky of Sky Realm warrior. Shi Yan then forcefully swung his arms, and the 2 brothers, who were well prepared, flew away towards the center of the lake. By that time, Chi Xiao had also arrived in the center of the lake, and he was easily able to catch the 2 brothers and take them to the bridge. The 2 brothers didn't hesitate at all. Among the crowd, they hurriedly took the opportunity to climb on the corpse bridge. An anguished scream resounded from a warrior who was still at the edge of the lake. He was shrouded deeply in the disasters, but no one could rescue him. The defensive halo and his secret treasures couldn't withstand the damage caused by the 4 disasters. Once his power of defense disappeared, these 4 disasters would strike him to death, burn him to ashes, or the lightning would destroy his soul. He also could be shredded by the storm or be frozen by frost. Just like that, around 10 people had suffered tragic deaths because they couldn't get to the center of the lake to climb onto the corpse bridge. Shi Yan turned, gave a quick look, and realized that as long as warriors were in the range of 5 meters below the corpse bridge, they would not be affected by the 4 disasters. Chi Xiao was already there. The intensified smoke that was hovering around his body had also dissipated. He no longer needed to waste his power to resist the surrounding disasters. Slightly letting out a sigh of relief, Shi Yan strenuously moved to Kai Yi. At this moment, Kai Yi's clothes were all wet, and her appearance looked quite awkward. Sweat appeared on her white face. Her eyes were full of panic while she put out all of her strength in her body to deal with the 4 disasters. More than 10 ribbons were fluttering in Kai Yi's cuffs. Each of them flashed up with colorful lights and vaguely covered her entire body. Under the influence of these 4 disasters, she launched these ribbons, and they exploded one by one. Every time a ribbon exploded, Kai Yi's face changed a little bit, showing an expression of panic. Each of those ribbons was Kai Yi's surviving defensive energy circle. Once these ribbons were all destroyed, Kai Yi would be exposed and then immediately bitten and swallowed by the 4 disasters without any bones remaining. Shurian coldly looked at her. A trace of hesitation flashed across his eyes. Kai Yi and Ai were both difficult to control. Ai had succeeded in her tricks, which made him more vigilant. He subconsciously considered Kai Yi the same as Ai. He didn't know what would happen if he saved Kai Yi. Would this girl consider him as a target in her calculations in the future, just like Ai? When they were at the bottom of the lake, he had seen Kai Yi's entire naked body and even violated her. Thus, he believed that Kai Yi hated him to the core. With this hatred at heart, Kai Yi definitely would not be obedient in the future. Perhaps she would be like Ai, always thinking about dealing with him. With this thought, Shurian somehow didn't want to save her and thought of just letting her fend for herself. Shurian! Kai Yi suddenly screamed out loud with panic. You said that before we get out of the dark, magnetic, noxious mist, we are still companions. Do you remember your words? If you do, help me. Kai Yi aggressively looked at him. Her graceful face was filled with anxiety. Shurian hummed, then finally continued to use his hidden power, walking step by step towards her. I obviously remember. I am not like that bitch Ai. If I say something, I will do it. Standing next to Kai Yi, he stretched out his hand, grabbing her thin waist, and used the starlight to cover her body to help her resist the 4 disasters. Being grabbed at her waist, Kai Yi looked restrained. Her body slightly trembled. She bowed her head, gently took a deep breath, and said with a low voice, You have helped me this time. I will remember this. The last time when we were in the lake, and you violated me, I will consider it as if nothing ever happened. Shurian was surprised. The refreshing fragrance of Kai Yi's body struck his nose. His arm wrapped around her waist, feeling the amazing vibration. His heart shook as he suddenly remembered the fluttering scene in that lake, and couldn't suppress the capricious feelings inside. Go quickly. Kai Yi saw him dumbstruck all of a sudden, but didn't know what he was thinking. Hence, she hastily shouted. Shurian woke up, nodded, and said with a grin, No worries. This lake has a huge impact on these disasters. It has significantly weakened the power of the flames and lightning. Otherwise, not many people could have resisted them so long. Now that I have decided to save you, you will be safe and sound. After talking, he wrapped his arms around her waist and suddenly shouted. Various kinds of energies then burst out. A horrifying, mountain-like momentum broke out from his body. Under the impact of different types of forces, Shurian's strength became intimidating. Even the power of those little starlight spots covering his body also seemed to be enhanced. An intensive cluster of those starlight spots faintly formed a wonderful star diagram. The tremendous powers of flames, storms, lightning, and frost massively approached and fell on that star diagram. But as soon as they fell on it, they triggered the star diagram, which instantly shot out many beams of starlight. Starlight and the 4 disasters collided with each other, splashing countless more energy spots. Under the defensive star shield, Shurian was safe and sound. Making use of his sturdy body, he dragged Kai Yi step by step towards the corpse bridge. At this time, Qi Xiao had already reached the corpse bridge and was climbing to the top. Seeing Shurian coming, Qi Xiao displayed a cheerful face, nodded towards him, and said, Good boy! Shurian revealed a smile and brought Kai Yi to the safe area. His momentum suddenly soared, and violent energy fluctuations burst out from his body. When other warriors who were pushing and shoving saw Shurian coming, They could feel the powerful fluctuations rising from his body. Their eyes changed, and they immediately backed down obediently. "Let's go," Shiryan hummed as he calmly went through these warriors. Let Kai get on the corpse bridge first, and then followed her steps, stepping on the first corpse of the bridge. Under Shiryan's protection, Kai quickly climbed to the top. Her long legs moved up and down, dazzling Shiryan, who was below her. He couldn't prevent himself from having a strong lust. Not good. Shiryan felt cold at heart as he was immediately aware that this negative emotion had begun to spread slowly. Previously, he had collected warriors' dead bodies and had absorbed a lot of auras from those warriors who had just died. The auras this time were much richer than before, and they kept pouring into his body and only stopped when he could barely bear it anymore. 720 acupuncture points in his body began to take in the negative emotions, which then slowly outflowed and affected his mind, enlarging his inner evil side and his original instinct. This time his acupuncture points absorbed the auras, which were more vigorous than before. Thus, the negative emotions were also much more violent than in the past. In the battle that was still raging, once all of the negative emotions burst out, he would probably go out of control. If he fell into the possessed by the devil state, perhaps he wouldn't be able to differentiate enemies and friends and would end up killing all the creatures that he saw. Destructive lust was the most wicked side of humanity and the source of demons. This time, when that lust burst out, he was afraid that his tough mind wouldn't be able to control it. He didn't know what would happen in the next second. Maybe even Zhuo and Zhuo Shi would be destroyed as well. The only way to stop this violent madness seemed to be releasing the desire to alleviate its impact. However, in the present situation, how could he have enough time to release it? Who could give him that amount of time? Shiryan's eyes were burning up and stuck on Kai Yi's mesmerizing, sweaty body. When he looked at her butt and beautiful legs, the lust inside him was getting stronger. On one hand, it was the ruthless desire to kill. On the other hand, he had to find a girl to give vent to. These two options placed him in a dilemma. Either option didn't seem to be suitable in the current situation. If he was really in the possessed by the devil state and he released his infinite evil power, he was afraid that the final consequence would go beyond his control. He didn't want to be out of control. Struggling within his heart, he tried to control himself without looking at Kai Yi, who was above him, or having thoughts about anything which could provoke the lust in his mind. Gritting his teeth and displaying a ferocious face, Shiryan followed Kai Yi and quickly moved to the area where the two rivers interweaved. Chapter 400 Out of Control. Chapter 400 Out of Control. Choices. There was always a choice, but these two options were not what Shiryan wanted. No matter what choice he made, neither seemed suitable for this occasion. The best choice would be that he would not be affected by these negative emotions. However, Shiryan clearly knew that every time the negative emotions burst out, one of his evil sides would be amplified infinitely. Even with his perseverance, it was difficult to resist the demon state and maintain his consciousness. The torrential negative power overflowed uncontrollably from the acupuncture points in his body. This negative power was absorbed into his body, penetrating his veins, bones, blood, and affecting his sea of consciousness, seeming to control his state of mind. With this choice, he gradually lost himself as he began to breathe heavily. His eyes slowly became red, showing a strong sense of violent madness. Boom! When he stomped his foot, a violent force poured into the ancient corpse under it. The ancient corpses that had been stepped on exploded one by one under his feet and then turned into blocks of flesh with blood dripping down on the lake below. Boom, boom, boom. Every time he stamped his feet, the ancient corpses that were being trampled on shattered into pieces and fell. The corpse bridge below his upper body began to break. The ancient corpse bodies began to tear in half. They didn't seem to have any other strength to support the bridge as they suddenly started falling. The remaining warriors who were stepping on those ancient corpses screamed miserably and fell together with those corpses. Shiryen stomped his feet on the warriors who were below him, and all of them fell into the small lake. Their bone-chilling screams came up with horror. Kai and the other people, who were still on the corpse bridge, bowed their heads to look down and then all displayed looks of terror. Shiryen had completely cut off the path of the warriors behind him. The warriors that fell into the lake were instantly shrouded by the 4 disasters. They all threw a trace of despair on their faces and hatred in their eyes for Shiryen. Unfortunately, Shiryen was out of control and didn't look down. His eyes were burning red while he turned his face, ignoring the screams of those warriors, and continued to move up along the corpse bridge. The painful screams were quickly silenced. The remaining warriors all had low cultivation bases. It had been difficult for them to come close to the corpse bridge as the 4 disasters had drained almost all of their strength. As they fell into the lake again, their strength apparently couldn't resist the disasters. They were completely engulfed by the disasters. Not long after, the warriors were killed. The 4 disaster quickly invaded them, and thus, not even blood was left of them. Shiryen unconsciously didn't know what was going on below as he was still breathing heavily and kept climbing to the top of the corpse bridge while his 2 eyes were bloodshot. At the weaving points of the 2 galaxies, ancient corpses were floating up and down. Mysterious ancient formations were engraved on their chests. The center of each formation seemed to have a secret treasure as a power source. These ancient corpses with secret treasures on their chests were crazily attacking the warriors. The people of Xiaofeng's and Li Wei's groups were competing for the secret treasures on those ancient corpses. Other warriors were also launching their attacks to snatch the secret treasures. Once a corpse was killed, the secret treasure on its chest would separate from its body. At that time, all warriors would desperately fight with each other for that secret treasure. Zwusher stood aside as she didn't dare to get involved in this fight. She just watched those warriors attack and kill each other for the secret treasures in amazement. After getting up to the top and having a quick glance at this cruel battle, Zhusu then stood together with Zwusher and told her not to take any actions nor attract any attention from others. Zwusher understood and was obedient. She just watched but didn't get involved. She determinedly kept herself safe. The place where she was standing was actually very secure. The warriors all came up here because of those secret treasures. If she didn't show the scramble for those secret treasures, other warriors would not consider her the threat nor pay attention to her. After having climbed up here, Qi Shao and the 2 brothers Laoli also stepped to the side where Zwusher was standing. However, different from Zwusher, the 2 brothers Laoli revealed a trace of desire on their faces while they looked at the secret treasures on those ancient corpses. "So, do you want them?" Laoli waited for Qi Shao to come closer and asked with a cheerful face, "Should we take action?" Qi Shao took a deep breath, watching this cruel battle. He slightly shook his head and said, "Wait a moment. Shiryen will come up soon, and then we will discuss this." The 2 brothers, Laoli, both nodded at the same time. The water here was very strange. It was next to the crowd, but no one was aware of it. People thought that it was just an illusion and had no influence on them. It was a flat layer of stones under their feet. This land emitted white lights, which were constantly floating like a small boat. Most of the warriors who came up here were at the Sky Realm. There were 20 of them. Most of the Sky Realm warriors were getting involved in this battle, making the situation extremely dangerous. If any of them were careless, they would come to a desolate fate. Although Qi Shao had the second sky of Sky Realm cultivation base, in this area it was not something special. There were 6 third sky of Sky Realm warriors, 10 second sky of Sky Realm warriors, and most of the remaining ones were at the first sky of Sky Realm. Except for the 2 brothers Laoli, there were another 2/3 sky of Nirvana Realm warriors. Zwusher was the only one at the Disaster Realm. Kai also got up there quickly. After having a quick look at the current situation, she then quietly walked over to Qi Shao and the others and said with a solemn face and a low voice, "I think there is something wrong with Shi Yan." "What?" Qi Shao, Lao Li, Zwisher, and the others asked at the same time. "What do you mean?" "I am not sure." Kai shook her head while her face was very weird. "I feel that he fears of being possessed by the devil." Possessed by the devil. Everyone's face changed. "He has very strong energy waves, but he seems to have lost his mind. He was full of violent, murderous aura as if he wanted to destroy everything. I don't know how or why he is in this state. When I was above him, I could feel that he wanted to kill me. The feeling was extremely terrible." After hearing these words, Qi Shao and the others were all horrified as they looked at the direction of the corpse bridge altogether. A very strong, evil aura burst out there first. That evil aura had the thick smell of blood as if it was soaked in the sea of blood, which gave people a feeling of extreme danger. In that strong, evil aura, Shi Yan with his red eyes gradually appeared. Looking at his eyes for a while, Qi Shao, Zwisher, Kai, and the others were all agitated. It seemed like their sea of consciousness was affected, bringing out a violent, destructive lust as well. A trace of violence, craziness, and bloodthirst came out from Shi Yan's dark red pupils. At this moment, Shi Yan was not normal indeed. He was like a ferocious ghost drilled out from hell that resented that he couldn't tear all creatures apart. Now he looked even much more terrifying than the strongest beasts they had encountered in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist before. Not good. Qi Shao's face changed dramatically. He screamed in fear, "I fear that Shi Yan has really fallen in the possessed by the devil state. I don't know what this kind of state will cause. Let's go there and check." Zwisher was in a little bit of a panic and subconsciously wanted to go next to Shi Yan to ask him what had happened. "Little Shi, don't go." Qi Shao hastily grabbed her and said, "When Shi Yan is in this state, he doesn't have his consciousness. If you come close to him, perhaps you will become his first target. Don't go. But if he keeps being like this, it will be hazardous." Zwisher struggled a little bit and knew that she couldn't get out of Qi Shao's shackle. She couldn't help but shout, "Shi Yan, what happened to you? How can we help you?" Kai and Zwisu also looked at Shi Yan, waiting for him to answer. "How?" Shi Yan suddenly let out a horrifying roar which was not like a human. A flow of endless evil aura along with this roar spread throughout the battle area. All the warriors, sea of consciousness, shook violently. The two brothers, Lao Li's bodies were strongly agitated. Zwishu's body was the same, trembling in shock. Blood flowed out from his eyes, while his face revealed an extreme expression of fear. The other two Nirvana Realm warriors were the same as the two brothers Lao Li. Blood flowed out from their eyes, and they had to sit down on the ground. Shi Yan let out a loud roar which was full of violent, fierce power. This evil aura kept increasing and affecting all warriors. The sea of consciousness of the Nirvana Realm warriors could hardly control their minds. Thus, that evil aura hit their sea of consciousness directly and stirred it up, and at this time their sockets bled. On the contrary, although Zwisher's face was pale, she was still safe and sound. As her sea of consciousness hadn't formed yet, she didn't suffer the impact of Shi Yan's evil aura. That was why the minds of the two brothers Lao Li, who were at the Nirvana Realm, were damaged, but hers wasn't. The eyes of Kai and Qi Shao, the two Sky Realm warriors, also changed dramatically. They hurriedly suppressed the fluctuations of their sea of consciousness, using all of their strength to prevent them from being affected by Shi Yan's impact. After Shi Yan's roar, the Sky Realm warriors from the Divine Land who were still fighting stopped suddenly with shock and all looked at Shi Yan. "Stinky boy, what are you doing?" Zhao Feng's face darkened. He suddenly shouted out loud, "Don't scare people. You are possessed by the devil now. Do you really want to kill yourself? Kid, Quickly hold your breath and meditate. Sit at one place and do not move. Put all of your strength to control your mind. Don't think too much. Li Wei's eyes flickered, looking at Shiryan from a distance. She then spoke up. Zhao Feng, that method you just said is useless for him. This kind of possessed by the devil's state is not caused by cultivation, but the will of depravity. With this kind of possessed by the devil's state, it is not easy for him to restore himself just by meditation. I am afraid that this guy has cultivated some evil technique which has led to some variations that now have affected his mind. This situation is difficult to reverse. Ah! Zhao Feng screamed and blankly looked at Shiryan without knowing what he should do for now. Chapter 401, Rampage. Chapter 401, Rampage. Be careful with this guy. He has become crazy already. Don't stay too close to him. The middle-aged warrior with a scarred face snorted coldly and said impatiently, At this time, if he really wants to die, I don't mind fulfilling his wish. While he was talking, his eyes were cold as he was observing Shiryan aggressively. He looked like he wanted to finish Shiryan once and for all. It was unknown if it was that warrior's hostility that drew Shiryan's attention or not, but he let out a loud roar and fiercely looked at everyone. His crazy, bloodthirsty eyes suddenly gazed at that middle-aged warrior. What are you staring at? Do you want to die? That warrior revealed a cold, disdainful smile. What's good about bedevilment? After all, you're only at the Nirvana realm. Since you want to die, I will satisfy your wish. Tuku, this kid's a disciple of our divine radiant cult. If you touch him, I will not forgive you, shouted Zhao Feng. He's insane. You want to cover a madman? That middle-aged warrior with a scarred face, whose name was Tuku, revealed a cold countenance as he contemptuously ridiculed. This kind of person doesn't have a firm willpower. In this critical time, he let himself fall into bedevilment. I am afraid that even when he wakes up, he will not be of much use. You shouldn't care for him. How? However, at this point in time, Shiryan roared once again. He now looked like a crazy beast. His entire body poured out a white mist while rushing towards Tuku. Tuku wore a cold face as he sneered. Want to die? Tuku, don't do anything rash, Zhao Feng shouted. This guy is our divine radiant cult's disciple. Dealing with him means dealing with the divine radiant cult. If you dare to kill him, I will not forgive you. Since when has Pure Land been scared of the divine radiant cult? Tuku laughed strangely, seeing Shiryan rushing over. Tuku pulled out a corpse next to him, which he had captured and tied up. The body of this ancient corpse, which had lost its secret treasure, was badly damaged and had no power remaining in it. After a blow from Tuku, a beam of blood-like light suddenly poured into the ancient corpse. The ancient corpse dashed toward Shiryan. On the way, the bloody, flesh body of the ancient corpse fell off, leaving only a skeleton. Under the repulsive force, the skeleton of the corpse abruptly burst out. Its hard, thick, long bones turned into a stream of blood, splashing on Shiryan's body. Clatter! The sound of metal collision came from Shiryan's chest. Sharp, bloody bones pierced at his body, which was like bombarding a hard stone. Light spurted out from Shiryan's chest. His clothes were torn down, but his skin remained undamaged. Tuku squinted while his face revealed a glimpse of fright. Zhao Feng, Liu, and others were also dumbstruck, looking at Shiryan with disbelief in their eyes. Tuku had the third sky of Sky Realm cultivation base. Pure Land's secret martial techniques were famous for strange and aggressive features. This method of using a warrior's bones as attacking spears was called Variant Fleshbone Spear, which was terrifyingly intimidating. Ordinary, secret, defensive treasures could barely resist it. Although Shiryan faced that fierce blood spear's stabbing force with only his sturdy body, his whole body was totally unharmed. That gave the other people a bone-chilling and panicked feeling. Is this kid even a human? How come this guy's body could be even mightier than typical beasts? The crowd couldn't help but have this thought in their minds. They all looked at Shi Yan with frightened eyes. They subconsciously took one step backward, scared that Shi Yan in the bedevilment state would consider them as prey. Ha ha ha! Tuku, you couldn't do it. Zhao Feng was about to lend a hand to Shi Yan. But when he saw he was still safe, he suddenly became happy and couldn't help but burst into laughter. It looks like your Pure Land's secret techniques cannot compare to our divine radiant cults. This disciple didn't even use a secret treasure, and your variant flesh-bone spear still couldn't harm him. It really makes me doubt if Pure Land has an unearned reputation. Liu also showed a contemptuous smile and said, well, despite having such high reputation, Pure Land seems to exaggerate their fame. From what I've witnessed today, it turns out to be just banal. The faces of Tuku and the other Pure Land's warriors were all pale, while their eyes became gloomy. At this time, Shi Yan once again roared loudly as he crazily dashed towards Tuku. A bunch of starlight spots flashed out from his chest. It seemed that he was enhancing his defensive power. Like a beam of starlight, Shi Yan zoomed over and instantly appeared in front of Tuku. Terrible soul fluctuations flowed out from his red eyes. Just with a look at Shi Yan, Tuku's sea of consciousness was strongly stirred up. He had a feeling of being submerged in an endless sea of blood and besieged by many ancient corpses. This kid's eyes can shoot out mind attacks. Be careful! A third Sky Realm warrior suddenly shouted when he saw Tuku revealing a trace of unconsciousness. Tuku's eyes instantly restored to their normal state. He felt his blood was chilled while his sturdy body twisted like a snake. His bones then produced a loud sound which constantly reverberated inside of his body. His bones burst out like fried beans popping. When the sound echoed from inside his body, Tuku's body suddenly emitted a dark green halo. This halo was like some kind of liquid covering his entire body. This dark green light was a little devilish. Amongst the misty drizzle, there seemed to be a malicious spirit lodging in his body. Waiting for Shi Yan to rush over, this green liquid quickly opened and turned into 3 green, spooky ghost claws, which then stretched out and snatched him. Dark green ghost hand. Tuku sneered coldly and opened his mouth, spitting out a bunch of lights, which divided into 3 and went into the claws separately. The 3 ghost claws, under the lights from his mouth, exposed 3 green eyes that looked like ferocious ghosts from hell, peeping into the human world and spreading out icy, green lights. A soul-devouring thought spread out and directly infiltrated Shi Yan's sea of consciousness through his red eyes. You dare! Zhao Feng roared angrily and couldn't help but finally take action. He launched a bunch of scorching sun god lights towards Tuku. In the divine light, people could vaguely see the sun nourishing all creatures. Those creatures could survive and reproduce under the sunlight. Another Pure Land warrior grunted, leaped up, and instantly appeared next to Tuku. A round drum flew out from his sleeves. As soon as the drum emerged, it bulged and produced a dull, thumping sound. Under the impact of that drum sound, creatures which appeared in the godlight seemed to be destroyed one by one, leaving no trace. The intent domain lodged in the sun godlight was smashed down. The intimidation of the sun godlight also reduced significantly. That warrior took the opportunity to launch a blow. 5 different lights from the round drum flashed up and disappeared, instantly shooting towards the sun godlight and destroying its power. Crack, crack. Tuku's 3 ghost claws had now grabbed Shi Yan's neck. The devil claws were as sharp as knives, mercilessly pressing Shi Yan's throat, releasing a creepy sound. As soon as Qi Xiao, Kai Yi, and the others saw Shi Yan encountering danger, they immediately rushed over. attempting to help him confront the enemy. The two brothers also shouted. They seemed to have some kind of divine power as the gloves on their hands released a fierce, torrential intent domain, striking toward the group of the Pure Lands warriors. The three ghost claws squeezed Shi Yan's neck even more tightly. Although there was a horrifying sound, his neck wasn't torn apart and remained unscathed. The dark green ghost hand revealed the ghost eyes staring at Shi Yan's red eyes. A cold, evil god power penetrated his sea of consciousness, attempting to make him unable to control his body or form an effective defensive force. Wailing, Shi Yan roared crazily. A bunch of blood-red lights burst out from his red eyes. An intent domain of destruction, violence, and bloodshed jumped directly into the ghost eyes of the three ghost claws. Those three ghost eyes exploded one by one, and the intent domain inside the ghost eyes that came from Tuku was fragmented. Right after that, Tuka's body was also affected by that evil intent domain. His face suddenly changed as a small stream of blood light flashed up in his eyes. Shi Yan swung his arms, which now had a purple hue. Violent power spewed out and aggressively shrouded the three dark, green ghost hands. Bang, bang, bang. The three dark green ghost hands condensed by Tuku all burst open, turning into many green dots of light which then dissipated into heaven and earth. How can it be? Tuku subconsciously screamed out loud. You are only at the third sky of Nirvana realm. How can you break the dark green ghost hands that I have condensed? Impossible. Tuka shouted while his face finally revealed a glimpse of fright. He hurriedly stepped backward. Shi Yan's figure wiggled a little bit. A huge, purple-red fist suddenly appeared on Tuka's right side and fiercely hit him. This kind of power was like a surging tide, bringing along the intent domain of destruction, bloodthirst, and craziness that instantly poured into Tuka's body. When this horrifying energy struck his body, an explosive sound resonated from Tuka's body. His ribs even protruded out of his skin. Tuku screamed tragically. Blood kept flowing out like a river from his left hip. In his screams, Tuka looked like he was encountering devils and hurriedly dodged away in panic, not daring to face Shi Yan anymore. He was terrified. A few warriors who were surrounding and watching them wore a frightened look. Their eyes were glued on Shi Yan in fright. Although Shi Yan was only at the third sky of Nirvana realm, which was one full level lower than Tuku, he could still injure Tuku severely. What kind of situation was this? Shi Yan, you're really powerful. Lao Li burst into laughter. An arrogant, divine power flowed around his body. Together with his brother Lao Luin, he was dealing with a first sky of sky realm warrior of Pure Land who was now covered in blood. It seemed that this warrior didn't have even the slightest resistance left. Shi Yan fought with a warrior who was one complete level higher than him and defeated his opponent. Zhuashir's eyes sparked strange lights. Seeing Shi Yan, who was in his bedevilment, display his intimidation, her heart was moved a little bit as she felt that Shi Yan somehow had an unspeakable evil charm in this state. Chapter 402 Mistaken. Chapter 402 Mistaken. 10 ancient corpses were floating in the galaxy. Each of them had an ancient formation, the center of which was inlaid with a secret treasure. After Shi Yan had attacked Tuku, the divine radiant cult's members Zhaofeng and Li Wei, after hesitating a little bit, both dashed toward the Pure Lands warriors to take action. The fight between the divine radiant cult and the Pure Land affected most of the other warriors. Seeing Shi Yan gazing crazily at Tuku, Qishao, Kai, Lao Li, and the others were afraid that the Pure Lands warriors would join forces to kill him. Thus, they also rushed up and stared at those warriors. Pure Land had only 2/3 sky of Sky Realm warriors. Tuku was shrouded by Shi Yan's attack as he was exhaustedly struggling to deal with Shi Yan's pursuit. The other third sky of Sky Realm Warrior was besieged by the unity of Xiaofeng and Li Wei, and was strenuously resisting the opponent's attack. The strength of Xiaofeng and the other divine, radiant cult warriors were not inferior to that of the Pure Lands warriors. Together with the power of Qi Shao, Kai, Laoli, and the others, the divine radiant cult had gained the upper hand. At this moment, Pure Lands warriors kept screaming. Other warriors stood aside to watch them. When they saw the divine radiant cult and the Pure Land fighting with each other, they were a little hesitant, but tried to avoid the fight and continued to deal with the ancient corpses. If those ancient corpses were not destroyed, the secret treasures on their chests would not fall, and thus they would not be able to obtain those secret treasures. These people had joined together to deal with ancient corpses because of those secret treasures. Unless those treasures fell out of the corpses, they would not attack each other. However, once the secret treasures fell from the corpses, these warriors would then immediately fight against each other. Every time anyone was lucky enough to get a secret treasure, that person would be extremely happy, hurriedly storing it in his storage ring, keeping guard together with his fellows to prevent someone from stealing it. The situation was unbearably chaotic. The only people that were not affected by this fierce battle were grandfather Zhusu and his niece, Zwisher. When Shurian let out a roar, Zwishu's sea of consciousness trembled and his mind was damaged. He knew that his realm was not high enough, and thus he would be easily defeated in the hands of those Sky Realm warriors. Hence, he didn't make a move to get those secret treasures. Moreover, he was worried for Zwisher's safety as well, afraid that the fight might spread to her. Thus, he decided to stay back to help protect her. In the fierce battle, once Zhusu and Zwisher saw the danger coming, they would immediately create a few phantoms. Then, with the help of these illusory phantoms, they could escape from the risk at ease. They didn't seek for merit, but safety. Zhusu and Zwisher used all means to make sure that they were unharmed. Everyone's goal was the secret treasures on the ancient corpses. When those warriors saw Zhusu and Zwisher weren't showing desire nor had any action to prevent them from taking the secret treasures, they left Zhusu and Zwisher in peace, which helped the two of them become the safest ones in this place. Shurian was still in his bedevilment state as he was being covered with a violent, crazy, and bloodthirsty aura. His whole body hovered around in a thick white layer of mist in which there seemed to be substantial fluctuations. Anyone who came close to him would be instantly affected by this negative power, and that person's sea of consciousness would become a mess. Zhusu quietly observed and realized that wherever Shurian passed, the warriors who were fighting there all tried to avoid him. For those who didn't avoid him, if the white mist hovering around Shurian's body touched their bodies, their sockets would redden, and their faces then wore a wild, bloodthirsty expression. Not only was he under the bedevilment state, but he could also pull other people into this kind of craziness. The thick white mist was filled with negative feelings enough for a regular warrior to instantly become the most ferocious beast. That warrior would lose his mind and would not even spare his companions next to him. Zhusu was secretly aghast as he understood deeper about Shurian. He strictly warned Zwisher that before he restored his consciousness, she absolutely must not get close to Shurian to avoid being affected by his negative emotions. Zwisher grinned and didn't care. She just curiously looked at Shurian while her eyes flickered with strange and excited lights. The one most filled with regret in the field was Tuku. He was hit on his left hip by Shurian's bombardment. A violent, bloodthirsty force penetrated his body, breaking some of his ribs as well. Right now, that violent, bloodthirsty evil force still stayed inside his body and was slaughtering freely, which prevented him from using his full strength. In this state, although Tuku still had spare power to launch his strikes, many martial techniques of the Pure Land couldn't destroy Shurian's body after hitting hard. They couldn't stop Shurian, even just a bit. Shurian's body was trembling as the coercive power of his body was like tens of thousands of galloping horses. At this moment, regardless of the defense force of his body or the burst of his body's energy, they both reached a level that he had never achieved. Under the bedevilment state, his strength seemed to become easier to urge. When various types of mysterious martial techniques engraved in his mind were cast out, not only were they not influenced by the state of bedevilment, but they also had a massive increase in effect. His normal power was already incredible, but the bursting power had become more perfect and terrifying when it was released from his hands. The second sky of rampage, the state of bedevilment, and all kinds of power perfectly burst out. Tuku now realized that he had mistaken Shurien. Although Shurien was clearly at the third sky of Nirvana realm, his momentum suddenly skyrocketed. His frantic, evil energy torrentially flowed in his body, together with different surging spirits which were enough to affect a person's mind. Whether it was a physical attack or mind invasion, Tuku couldn't bear either of them. He had used all kinds of secret techniques, but couldn't harm Shurien's body. On the contrary, he was too frustrated under Shurien's attack that the situation had become more and more unfavorable to him. Xiao Feng! Tuku avoided Shurien's attack as quick as electricity and couldn't help but shout, "Is this kid really a disciple of the Divine Radiant Cult?" I knew that the Divine Radiant Cult had a few extraordinary saplings, but I have never heard of this guy. Humph! Xiao Feng showed a trace of disdain, coldly sneered. The Divine Radiant Cult's internal situation is much more profound than you can imagine. The occasional appearance of one or two outstanding young guys is normal. The Pure Land ancestors also had this kind of metamorphosis. Unfortunately, those people haven't entered the dark, magnetic, noxious mist yet. You have provoked the fight this time, so just consider it as the misfortune you have to bear. Xiao Feng revealed a cold sneer again, and then, together with Li Wei, he rushed over to another third sky of Sky Realm Warrior of the Pure Land to bombard indiscriminately. Facing the unity of these two people, this third sky of Sky Realm Warrior looked extremely strained as he didn't have any way to take the initiative in the offense. He could only use some defensive methods to deal with Xiao Feng and Li Wei. In this chaotic situation, a few people who were affected by Shurien's negative emotions slowly moved toward Shurien for an unknown reason, as if they were controlled by some evil force. Moreover, they were compelled to unite with Shurien. Following Shurien's moves, they rushed toward Tuku, starting to besiege and attack him. Although these people only had the first sky of Sky Realm cultivation base, they were not afraid of death and didn't take into account their casualties. They were even willing to sacrifice their own lives to fight and kill Tuku for Shurien. A tall and mighty warrior, who had red eyes like Shurien's, crazily roared and howled, took the opportunity when Tuku dodged to move to his side, and then tightly shackled him. Bang, bang, bang. A tremendous, thundering sound came up from that warrior. Numerous lightning bolts shot out from his entire body and quickly wrapped around Tuku. Tuku suddenly paled. He shouted, "Get out!" A piece of fish scale-shaped light came out from Tuku's body. That thin piece was dark blue and extremely sharp, bombarded the warrior. In a short time, the warrior's body was full of blood splashing everywhere. Even his skin and flesh were split open and cut into pieces. However, in this situation, this warrior still didn't let go of his opponent. He continued to hug Tuku tightly without the fear of death. He seemed to be ready to sacrifice his own life. Shurien took this opportunity to take action. Another warrior whose eyes were also red stayed behind that warrior. He also rushed toward Tuku and wrapped around Tuku from behind, increasing the pressure to prevent Tuku from forcefully struggling. Shurien gasped for breath while his eyes were flooded with evil lights. He didn't say a word and instantly appeared in front of Tuku. Shurien raised his arms. In this critical time, the life and death seal merged into one and quickly flew out toward Tuku. His life and death seal flashed up and disappeared, penetrating his head. Tuke's eyes became dull. His face had a painful look. It seemed that he was struggling hard, wanting to chase out the evil forces invading his head. Boom, boom. Two earth-shaking explosive sounds came up from inside of Tuke's head. His head was like a watermelon being pounded forcefully on the ground and then bursting out. A mix of brain and blood suddenly splashed out. And just like that, Tuke, the third Sky of Sky Realm warrior, was killed by Shiryan. Even his head had exploded. Many warriors who were still fighting for the secret treasures couldn't help but raise their heads to look when hearing the explosion. Their faces all changed as their eyes flooded with fear. Shiryan, who had just killed Tuke, still had red eyes and was dashing over to the nearest warrior in an attempt to kill him, too. It was another warrior in the center of the lake who also had the third Sky of Sky Realm cultivation base. The next chosen victim had just killed an ancient corpse, took the secret treasure whose shape was like both knife and fork and put it into his storage ring. He was laughing and cheerfully shouting, "Sacred level secret treasure! Sacred level secret treasure! Ha ha ha, this trip was worth it. This trip was worth it." While laughing, his two eyes flickered with divine lights. He then looked around to find another target to continue to snatch the secret treasure off it. However, at this time, he looked in Shiryan's direction. Shiryan's eyes were still red as a bunch of blood-red lights shot out from his sockets. The blood lights were 3 meters long or so. They were like 2 flows of scarlet blood floating out from his eyes, bringing people a feeling of terror. Chapter 403, Diamond Martial Spirit. Chapter 403, Diamond Martial Spirit. Just taking a glance at Shiryan immediately startled that man. His sea of consciousness violently trembled. A murderous desire rebelliously surged up in his heart, generating a crazy desire of killing all creatures. Not good. Shuddering inside, he quickly stopped smiling and started to condense his strength, ready to deal with Shiryan's attack. The person who was under his bedevilment state hardly had his consciousness. As long as he considered someone a target, the external environment could barely change it. The only thing that one could do was kill the person who was in the bedevilment state, or else he would pursue and kill the other person. That warrior's mind was as bright as snow. That was why, when he realized Shiryan's state, he knew what he should do. Stop. Let us handle this guy first. This guy's existence can only disturb us and is a threat to everybody. That warrior turned his head and coldly harumphed, stopping the other fellows of his team from attacking the ancient corpses and asking them to divert the target. This team came from the Martial Spirit Palace in the Divine Great Land, which was one of the 7 ancient factions in the Divine Great Land. They all had a long history. This sect was the one who had dominated the Divine Great Land for tens of thousands of years. In this sect, all kinds of martial spirits were multiplied to the extreme. Almost all of their warriors had a special martial spirit. Speaking of Xiaoling, who was the leader of this team, he was a protector outside the Martial Spirit Palace and was nominated to be the elder in the future. As long as Xiaoling could enter the spirit realm and pass the Martial Spirit Palace's assessment, he would be qualified to be ordained as one of the elders of the Martial Spirit Palace. Regardless of his position in the Martial Spirit Palace or the access to wealth, it was far better than his current position as a protector. He came to the dark magnetic noxious mist to find some sacred-level secret treasures to prepare for the Martial Spirit Palace's assessment. The 7 ancient factions in the Divine Great Land didn't really get along well. They still harshly fought with each other. Xiaoling had also killed quite a lot of warriors from other forces in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist this time. All along the way on his journey, he nearly hadn't encountered any setbacks. Even if Shiryan didn't find him, maybe because of the secret treasures Shiryan's team possessed, he would find and kill Shiryan's team in the end. The fact that Zhao Feng and Liu fought with Tuke was exactly what he wanted. Therefore, When the people of Zhao Feng's group and Qi Zhao's group united to fight against Tu Ke's team from the Pure Land, he didn't participate and just stared at the ancient corpses and killed them, taking this opportunity to harvest more secret treasures. He actually had his own calculations. He wanted to wait for Zhao Feng, Liu, and Tu Ke to fight until both sides were all severely injured, and then he would jump in and clean up the mess by defeating Zhao Feng and Tu Ke and swooping the leftover benefits. When Shi Yan rushed towards him, he observed around a little and realized that Tu Ke had died. The people of Zhao Feng and Liu's group had a significant advantage. This was obviously not what he wanted to see. Therefore, the fact that Shi Yan came to him suited his purpose. After a loud roar, other warriors from the martial spirit palace understood his mind. They all coldly sneered and looked at Shi Yan, wanting to take the opportunity to exterminate him, who was under the bedevilment state. There were 7 warriors from the martial spirit palace, including Xiaoling. Among them, Xiaoling and another warrior, Xiaohai, were both at the 3rd sky of Sky Realm. As for the remaining 5 warriors, 3 of them were at the 2nd sky of Sky Realm. This team was the strongest one in the small lake. These 7 people all made Shi Yan their target. They had absolute confidence. Not good. Zuosher couldn't help but scream anxiously, "Grandpa, Shi Yan's in danger. Those 7 people are very dangerous. I am afraid that Shi Yan won't be able to withstand." Zuosu's face also changed and became grave. He nodded and said, 2 3rd sky of Sky Realm, 3 2nd sky of Sky Realm, and another 2 1st sky of Sky Realm warriors. This unit is much stronger than the Divine Radiant Cults team and the Pure Lands team. Shi Yan's only on his own. He will apparently suffer a great loss. What should we do, Grandpa? Zuosher anxiously and helplessly said, I am only at the Earth Realm. I am afraid I cannot help him. Don't think about giving him a hand. Zuosu shook his head and grabbed her. If you go there, you will instantly be killed. Even if I go there, I cannot change anything. Zuosher showed a worried face and then turned toward Zhao Feng and Li Yu, shouting, Shi Yan's in danger. While Zhao Feng and Li Yu were dealing with the remaining Nirvana Realm warriors, they heard Zuosher. They both turned their head to throw a quick glance over. Zhao Feng suddenly shouted, Xiaoling, you scum! You guys are such shameless. You deal with only 1 kid of ours when you have that many people. Don't you feel any shame? He comes here to die himself. Don't blame us. Xiaoling grinned while his left arm turned slightly golden, performing his diamond martial spirit. His entire body had an invincible ardor that nothing could defeat. It seemed that with only his left arm, he could break all the barriers of the world. The Holy Land of the Martial Spirit Palace discovered the metal space of the 5 elements space in the divine Great Land. For Xiaoling to cultivate his diamond martial spirit to the peak, he had arduously cultivated in that metal space for 30 years. This helped his diamond martial spirit absorb more than 10 different functional metals from that metal space. His entire body could be instantly metallized, turning same as metal class secret treasures. Diamond Spirit Martial was the sacred level martial spirit which had been spread for more than 100,000 years. Once it was activated, the user's whole body would be metallized. Not only would the body have a solid defense like diamonds, but the arms and legs would also turn into powerful weapons, which were extremely terrifying. The intimidation was also incredibly shocking. At this moment, Xiaoling only metallized his left arm. He looked at Shi Yan and rushed over, directly condensing 10 kinds of strange metal powers in his body without using any other means, and just simply launched a punch toward Shi Yan. Strange metal lights burst out. His metallized arm suddenly became like a shining golden sword, directly stabbing on Shi Yan's chest with a loud bang. Shi Yan crazily rushed forward as metal collision sounds came up from his chest. While dashing forward, he was held back a little bit by this blow, halting in the midst of the strange void. 10 kinds of strange metal powers pierced through his chest through this punch. The mysterious power in front of his chest immediately gathered and turned into countless fine beams of energy lights, wrapping around those 10 kinds of metal power and preventing them from harming his body. Safe and sound. He was stagnant in the air for a while, and then suddenly let out a roar. A bunch of bloody red lights shot out from his eyes. The 2 beams of blood light, which were full of brutal, horrible, and negative feelings, instantly dashed toward Xiao Ling, piercing through Xiao Ling's neck and quickly penetrating his body. Damn! Freak! Xiao Ling cursed. His body immediately turned into a gold hue. Gold and silver lights were both radiated from his body skin and quickly covered his entire body. In a split second, a strange metal power in Xiao Ling's blood came out from his body and then covered his whole body, making him turn into a metal prodigy. Shi Yan's surging spirit went inside Xiao Ling's body through his neck and then ran all the way along his nerves to his head. Xiao Ling sneered coldly. His eyes turned gold and silver respectively, and so did his cheeks. That made his body look very strange, which gave people a feeling of watching something inhuman. The negative madness which flowed inside Xiao Ling's body was blocked by the strange metal power, and thus it couldn't penetrate his head. That kid has some tricks indeed. No wonder why even Tuku died in his hands. But don't think that killing Tuku also means you can kill me as well. Xiao Ling grinned and said, Tuku isn't my opponent. Once I'm metallized among the warriors who have the same realm as me, who can break my body. Xiao Ling was extremely arrogant and simply didn't lay his eyes on Shi Yan. When the other 6 warriors of the martial spirit palace saw Shi Yan unable to harm Xiao Ling, they were not in a hurry, but scattered to stop the other warriors who were following Shi Yan. Those warriors who were affected by Shi Yan's surging spirit were all at the first sky of Sky Realm. They all had red eyes and seemed to be enslaved by Shi Yan. As soon as they saw him fight with someone else, they immediately rushed up and didn't even care about their lives. As the 6 martial spirit palace's warriors saw that those warriors were only at the first sky of Sky Realm, they looked even more relaxed, laughed, and firmly launched their strikes. All kinds of rare martial spirits were cast out from their bodies. Either it was the soul fluctuations or an earthy figure or a watery corporeal body. These martial spirit palaces' warriors had the understanding of martial spirits, which was much more profound than a majority of other warriors. When they activated their martial spirits, they seemed to turn into another state, halting the warriors who were affected by the impact of Shi Yan's negative emotions. You deal with this guy. I'll go help that stinky kid. Zhao Feng told Li Yu with a solemn face. This kid is exceptional. If we introduce him to the God sect, they will definitely reward us. As what I've seen, this kid is not just a thing in a small pond. If we help him now, he will bring us unimaginable benefits. Li Yu's eyes brightened, as she understood immediately. She nodded and said, Don't worry. I will handle this guy and then come over to help you. The Divine Radiant Cult had a rigorous reward doctrine. If someone introduced a talented person to the sect, the recommender's position would be promoted. Seeing Shi Yan kill Tuku, even though he was only at the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm, Zhao Feng now treated him as the most potentially powerful warrior of the God sect in the future. Although Zhao Feng seemed to be generous, he was actually tendentious. He knew that if he could make Shi Yan join the God sect and become their most brilliant star, he would also be promoted accordingly, having more rights and wealth. Through Shi Yan, perhaps he could learn some mysterious inherited techniques of the God sect, and thus enter the spirit realm. Therefore, as soon as Xiao Ling wanted to destroy Shi Yan, he immediately felt anxious. He didn't care about himself almost defeating his current opponents to rush over to Shi Yan. Xiao Hai, deal with Zhao Feng. Seeing Xiao Feng coming over, Xiao Ling revealed a cold smile and spoke to his fellow. Xiao Hai nodded, indicating that he understood. He then turned into a blurry silhouette, which was actually a meandering figure, dashing toward Xiao Feng. Xiao Hai had already blocked Xiao Feng even before the latter could come close to Shi Yan. As both were at the third sky of Sky Realm, Xiao Feng didn't dare to be careless, and quickly refined his power to deal with Xiao Hai. Chapter 404, Hit to Deform It. Chapter 404, Hit to Deform It. Kid, you're indeed powerful. You will definitely become a brilliant talent of the divine radiant cult, Xiao Ling grinned. This is certainly not what I want to see. Killing you is to weaken the future power of the divine radiant cult. I will not let you grow. Xiao Ling's entire body had been metallized, dashing toward Shi Yan while launching an all-conquering metal intent domain to strike him. Sure, Yan didn't seem to know that Xiao Ling had been metallized. His whole body's muscles were convulsing, but he still started to fight back. Since both of them didn't use any secret techniques or any secret treasures, they looked like two barbarians fighting each other. When the mutated petrifaction martial spirit collided with Xiao Ling's diamond martial spirit, it was like stone against stone. It was unexpected that the petrifaction martial spirit did not have the lower hand. Dang, dang, dang. The ear-splitting metal sounds resounded from the bodies of the two of them. When Xiao Ling engaged in close combat, his metallized body, which should supposedly be not at all inferior, got hit unexpectedly under Shi Yan's bombardment and produced chinking sounds. This kind of violent energy impacted his body and agitated his blood and flesh, making his body, that was made from dozens of different kinds of strange metals, became unbearable. In the battle, although Xiao Ling's body was unharmed, it was severely shocking that the 7 holes on his face were bleeding. His face looked even more ferocious. On the contrary, under the bedevilment state, Shi Yan didn't seem to be facing anything unusual. His face didn't have any blood stain, as if he wasn't suffering from tiredness or pain. He instinctively used his fists to contend with Xiao Ling's attack and his metallized body. In the bedevilment state, Shi Yan had a lust for endless destruction. This lust unlimitedly expanded, making him insane and become someone who only knew killing and destroying instinctively. This was another kind of completely giving vent. Xiao Ling's head-on attack just gave Shi Yan a goal to give vent to. With the crazy bombardment, Shi Yan kept releasing his desire for destruction, which seemed like he had just entered a mysterious intent domain. While Shi Yan was fighting with Xiao Ling, 720 acupuncture points in his body continued to purify the negative energy and transform it into a kind of strange power that was useful for his body. It was unknown how long this fight went for, but the negative energy that was running in his acupuncture points finally started being washed away. A lump of mysterious power leaked out, and in just a short time, Shi Yan became conscious for a moment while his eyes glinted with a divine light from his moment of enlightenment. Mysterious force flowed all over his body, and together with a profound qi, it crashed into the blood vein ring. A barrier inside the blood vein ring was broken, and a memory directly flew out from the blood vein ring, drilling into his head. In an instant, in this mysterious realm, his whole body trembled. His mind sublimated. His sea of consciousness churned up, and a flow of soul consciousness suddenly grew up. The size of his sea of consciousness expanded 3 times in such a short moment. The transformation of his sea of consciousness was a sign of his realm breakthrough, which was inexplicable. Shi Yan had directly entered the first sky of Sky Realm, and the ancient profound Qi tree inside the profound Qi's halo was doubled. An instinctive insight suddenly shone into his heart. Shi Yan went insane again. The blood of his whole body quickly condensed together with the negative energy. His body, which had originally expanded because of the mutated petrifaction martial spirit, now shriveled. His formerly purple body turned into a horrible blood red. Many drops of bright red blood blended with the negative forces unexpectedly dripped out through his pores. However, they didn't fall but covered his body instead. It looked like a blood cocoon. From afar, Shi Yan looked like he was being covered fully with blood. The blood scent gave people a wicked feeling. Xiao Ling's face changed suddenly. Anyone who saw the fight between Xiao Ling and Shi Yan would realize that the changes in Shi Yan's body were faster. At this moment, the aura from Shi Yan's body was already doubled. Violently overbearing energy surged up, a kind of evil energy which could even destroy heaven and earth, massively flowed out from Shi Yan's body. Boom! Shi Yan launched a blow on Xiao Ling's chest, which had been metallized, and thus made it concave. The sound of broken bones arose from Xiao Ling's chest. His bones, which were tempered by dozens of exotic metals, didn't seem to be able to withstand this level of bombardment, and thus directly burst out. Xiao Ling couldn't help but scream in agony, subconsciously wanting to dodge. But it was too late. Shi Yan's power skyrocketed like a ferocious beast. He rushed over and snatched Xiao Ling while bombarding violent, brutal fists on his body. Xiao Ling's metallized body was distorted. It looked like a piece of metal that had been hammered until it deformed. Xiao Ling kept screaming in pain, but couldn't avoid his attack. He was hit until blood splashed everywhere, and his body was being deformed, gradually becoming shaped like a long strip. He looked like a secret treasure being forged into a sword by a blacksmith. Other warriors who were still dealing with the surrounding ancient corpses were all dumbstruck, looking at Shi Yan with disbelieving eyes, as if they were looking at a ferocious ghost. Everyone's backbones were chilled. They looked at Shi Yan in fear. Each of them could see his evil power bursting out right now. Xiao Ling's body had been knocked out. Diamond martial spirit, which was known as a rare defensive force, could not bear his beating, and finally got distorted. The divine light in Xiao Ling's eyes gradually dimmed. One gold eye and the other silver one also restored their original state. He was killed. Yes, Xiao Ling was dead. Is that kid a human? Xiao Ling's diamond martial spirit is known as the strongest defense of the martial spirit palace. Isn't it true that when the warriors at the same level relied only on their body strength, they basically couldn't break the diamond martial spirit's defensive power? Same level warriors? That kid clearly was at the Nirvana realm only. Is Xiao Ling too weak, or is that brat too strong? What do you think? I believe that kid is exceptional. All the warriors were boisterously discussing. They all wore bitter faces and had a feeling that they could barely defeat Shi Yan. Xiao Ling was dead, but Shi Yan didn't seem to know it. He kept staring at Xiao Ling's dead body and constantly punching it like he was making noodles. Deji! Xiao Hai's eyes were cracking open, while his face showed extreme misery. He rushed over to Xiao Ling and raised his face up while roaring. It serves you right. Zhao Feng sneered coldly and felt overjoyed as his judgments were right. This kid Shi Yan was absolutely a talent, probably the brightest star of the divine radiant cult in the future. As long as he got attached to this infinitely talented Shi Yan, his position in the divine radiant cult would definitely rise in the future. Boom! Xiao Ling's body directly burst out into two parts from his abdomen. Blood and flesh splashed everywhere. Shi Yan only stopped when Xiao Ling was totally smashed. He stood in a daze, not seemed to be knowing what was going on. He looked like he was thinking and wondering by himself. No one dared to disturb him. Everyone looked at him from a distance, even if he was in a daze. No one dared to take this opportunity to ambush him. They were all shocked by his performance. Tu Ku's head had been blown off. Xiao Ling's diamond martial spirit was broken into two parts by his brutal punches. Shi Yan's cruelty made people feel chilled to their bones and terrified. Many people stopped their fights with the ancient corpses and looked at Shi Yan from afar with cautious faces, as they were afraid that even a tiny move could arouse the fierceness inside him. Anyone who was his target ended up with a miserable fate. This was proved by the deaths of Tuku and Xiaoling. No one dared to make any move. Zhuosher struggled a little bit as she wanted to see the situation. However, Zhuosu dragged her back tightly, not allowing her to come close to Shi Yan. Kai Yi, who had killed a first Sky of Nirvana realm warrior, was also staring at him while wearing a complicated countenance. Forget it. Kai Yi had been ready to find a chance to kill this malicious Shi Yan. However, after this incident, she decided to give up this stupid thought and forget what had happened to her at the bottom of the lake before. Deji, Shi Yan, this young man, is too strong. He seems to be even more terrible than our bloodline. Lao Luan was startled and then spoke to Lao Li. Lao Li nodded with a grave face. He has helped us a lot. Without him, we should have died several times. Although there is no real friendship in this dark, magnetic, noxious mist, we should still treat him honestly and pay back his favor. This is the most basic moral standing. When other people help us, we must bear it in mind. I understand. Ha ha ha, good boy. I'm not wrong taking you with me. Zhao Feng burst into laughter, not caring about Xiao Hai crazily screaming over there, and then shouted to Shi Yan, "Wait until the trip in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist ends. I will definitely report to our predecessors, telling them that there is a seed of our god's sect in the endless sea." The divine radiant cult's disciples were agitated and revealed a trace of joy. Shi Yan's body, slightly shocked. After giving vent, it seemed that he had gradually restored his mind. The trace of daze in his eyes also diluted a little bit. Half a day later, Shi Yan suddenly turned his head around. His two eyes had already been restored to their normal state. The evil and ruthless aura also vanished into thin air. "Where is that bitch Aya?" He looked at Kai Yi and asked. Under his scrutinizing look, she gently shook her head and said, "After I came here, I don't know where she headed to. If I find that bitch, I will teach her a lesson," Lao Luan said with a cold voice. "Shi Yan," Zhuosher finally cried out in joy. "Are you all right? Are you really awake? Do you know who I am?" She waved her arm hard and showed a cheerful face with an excited look. Shi Yan grinned and nodded to her. "It's good that you guys are okay. I was afraid that I would harm you. Even I myself cannot control that state earlier. Don't worry. We are all fine." Zhuosu embarrassedly smiled, wiped off his sweat, and secretly let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 405, Sky Realm. Chapter 405, Sky Realm. "Kid, you seem to have had a breakthrough, right?" Zhao Feng came near Shi Yan, looked at him seriously, and cried out, "Have you entered the Sky Realm?" Qi Xiao, Kai Yi, and the others were all startled. They looked at Shi Yan with surprised faces. Shi Yan smiled and nodded. It seems so. While talking, he couldn't help but look at his right hand and then wear a weird face. Earlier, when the mysterious power in the acupuncture points in his body had fused with his blood, it condensed in his right palm, forming 3 drops of strange, dark red blood. The 3 drops of blood in the blood vessels of his palm transmitted a strong, surging energy fluctuation. In his palm, he realized that the 3 drops of blood were like rubies, crystal clear, and very beautiful. The skin and flesh of his palm didn't seem to be able to cover the dazzling light radiating from these 3 drops of blood. The immortal blood. Shi Yan secretly shouted while his face was full of surprise and joy. He had long heard from the Yang family that they had the immortal martial spirit. Under some specific circumstances, they could condensate the immortal blood, which had exceedingly marvelous effects. That year, Yang Tian Emperor had also borrowed immortal blood to know that Shi Yan was still alive and had some connection with the ice-cold flame. According to the Yang family, this immortal blood was magically useful. He only knew that the immortal blood could help them achieve many complicated purposes. 3 drops of blood in his palm had violent power fluctuations. They were totally different from the blood in his body. The power of these 3 blood drops even contained his mental fluctuations, as if his soul was lodged in these 3 drops of blood, giving him a feeling that these 3 drops had an incredible vitality. He didn't know the magical effect of the immortal blood or how to use them. However, these 3 drops of blood were formed nevertheless, which made him extremely happy. He had fallen into the bedevilment state, and he didn't know how he had entered the sky realm or condensed these 3 drops of immortal blood. The trip to the dark, magnetic, noxious mist could be described as an abundant harvest. Qi Shao, Kai Yi, and the others had dropped their jaws with horrified eyes. Especially Kai Yi and the 2 brothers, they and Shi Yan were on the same team in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist. They still remembered the first time they had met Shi Yan when he was only at the 2nd sky of Nirvana realm. After only a few months from the 2nd sky of Nirvana realm, he had broken through the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm and now entered the sky realm. Such an incredible cultivation progress. If they hadn't witnessed how Shi Yan had broken through the realms step by step with their own eyes, Kai Yi Lao Li and the others wouldn't have believed that anyone could have had such a continuous breakthrough like him. Ha ha ha, powerful. This kid really knows how to surprise others. Not only could he kill Tuku and Xiaoling, but he could also break through the sky realm. His future is limitless. Zhao Feng was very excited. In his eyes, the more powerful Shi Yan was, the nobler his status in the divine, radiant cult would be. Thus, introducing Shi Yan to the god sect could bring him so many benefits. Shi Yan took off the storage ring from Xiaoling, holding the storage ring in his hand. Shi Yan coldly looked at Xiao Hai, who was standing not far from there, and said, "Still not convinced?" Xiao Hai and other 3 martial spirit palaces warriors now amounted to the side, looking at Shi Yan with hatred, but not daring to take any actions. Hearing Shi Yan's provocations, Xiao Hai tried to press down his anger, and suddenly walked over to the remaining warriors of the Pure Land. Seeing Xiao Hai and his fellows coming, those warriors immediately reacted. The 3rd sky of Sky Realm warrior among them whispered, "We have to unite to be able to resist the people of the divine, radiant cult." Xiao Hai nodded and stood together with the Pure Land's warriors, still not daring to take any actions. At this time, the strongest side here was undoubtedly the group of Shi Yan and Zhao Feng of the divine, radiant cult. After their unison, they had overwhelming advantages. Even if the Martial Spirit Palace and the Pure Land united, they could not be better than Zhao Feng's group. Of course, there were not only the Martial Spirit Palaces and the Pure Land's warriors in Xiao Hai's group. Around 10 other warriors who were at the 2nd sky and the 1st sky of Sky Realm also gathered with Xiao Hai's group, as they seemed to know the current subtle situation. The situation in the field was now obvious. Zhao Feng, Shi Yan, and their fellows were in the same group. The rest were together in another group. They all cautiously looked at Shi Yan, Zhao Feng, and the others, as they were afraid that the people of Zhao Feng's group would suddenly launch a fatal blow. "Do you want to kill them?" Kai Yi asked. Qi Shao didn't say anything and looked at Shi Yan. Shi Yan was stunned for a moment. He looked at the remaining teams that were now united, and after looking at Zhao Feng and Liu, he suddenly spoke up with a smile. "We are evenly matched. If we desperately fight with each other, no one can gain any benefits." Zhao Feng nodded slightly and said with a lower voice, "If we actually start a fight with them, although we will not have a significant loss, the damage is still inevitable. Right now, everyone sees us as a threat, so continuing to fight with them is not necessary. The dark magnetic noxious mist still has one exotic land. A lot of warriors should be gathering there. If we consume too much strength and encounter other stronger warriors there, we will suffer a great loss. Liu frowned and said, Okay. Shi Yan looked at Xiao Hai's group and said with a darkened face, So we will continue to kill ancient corpses to harvest more secret treasures. We should do that. Zhao Feng smiled and said, I don't think those people dare to provoke us. So we can rest assured while killing the ancient corpses to find secret treasures. Ancient corpses floated around in the air as they seemed to be affected by a particular force, which prevented them from leaving the place. These ancient corpses had a formation technique on their bodies. If warriors didn't take the initiative to attack them, the corpses would not proactively attack. Only when these corpses realized that they were threatened would they fully resist. The power of the ancient corpses came from the secret treasures on their chest. The strength of 11 ancient corpses was equivalent to a standard sky realm warrior, so their threat was not that big. After discussing what to do, everyone began to act. Zhao Feng, Liu, and the other people of the divine radiant cult started to choose their own ancient corpses to kill. Qi Xiao, Kai Yi, and the other warriors also focused on the surrounding floating corpses. Sure, Yan was not in a hurry to take action. On the contrary, he forcefully broke Xiao Ling's storage ring and explored it carefully. Xiao Ling's storage ring was divided into 3 small spaces. One space had a stack of various types of cultivating materials and many refining mineral stones. The other one was to store daily necessities and food, while the remaining space kept the crystal stones and bottles, as well as some secret treasures. The fork and knife-shaped secret treasure, which Xiao Ling had collected recently, was releasing a blue halo. One would feel a bone-deep chill on touching it, as there was a terrifying icy power emitting from the secret treasure. When Shi Yan touched it, his fingers also felt a little cold. If it weren't for the ice-cold flame to have tempered his body, perhaps his fingers would have been frozen already. This secret treasure had the ice attribute. Shi Yan secretly nodded and put that treasure back into his storage ring. He also put on Xiao Ling's storage ring, as it was such a waste if he didn't take those that were given for free. When Xiao Hai watched Shi Yan put Xiao Ling's storage ring on his finger, his eyes flooded with hatred. However, he still didn't dare to rush over. Shi Yan didn't care about him either, just threw a quick look at him and sneered. The flame of hatred was getting stronger in Xiao Hai's eyes. He revealed a pernicious face and kept breathing heavily. He seemed to be reminding himself not to act rashly. At this time, the disciples of the divine radiant cult were staring at an ancient corpse. It had a green armor on its chest, which seemed to shrink inside the formation, and thus was not very clear. The armor emitted a shining green light like a piece of jade. Zhao Feng, Liu, and the others surrounded that ancient corpse, not letting it out of their sight. That green armor would definitely fall into the hands of Zhao Feng's group. He looked at Kai Yi and Qi Xiao. They were also staring at another ancient corpse. A silver dagger was inlaid on its chest. It released silver light, which seemed to be the power source of this ancient corpse. The corpse didn't have a life, but under their attack, it discharged many waves of sharp silver light. The silver light was extremely keen. Even Qi Xiao didn't dare to touch it. While dealing with this ancient corpse, he always tried to avoid it, as he was afraid that the silver light on that corpse would hit his body. Zuosu and Zuoshi didn't even move. They just stood beside him, surprisingly watching Qi Xiao and the others kill that ancient corpse. Looking at Zhao Feng's group and then Qi Xiao and the others, Shi Yan knew that if it continued like this, they would certainly kill the ancient corpses and take the secret treasures. Shi Yan raised his head to look at the floating corpses, and then looked around to choose one ancient corpse for himself. Through hunting and killing these ancient corpses, he could collect some secret treasures. At this time, A throbbing beam of the soul in his sea of consciousness churned up. His eyes flashed up. He immediately held his breath and meditated to perceive this soul throbbing. It was the ice-cold flame's call. The ice-cold flame went to the black Turtle Mountain range in the north, and then suddenly used his spirit to call him to come without any known reason. Over many years, he still maintained the spiritual communication with the ice-cold flame. Thus, he had soon formed a marvelous connection with it. In a certain range, he could feel the ice-cold flame's aura and be aware of the spiritual consciousness that the ice-cold flame released. Although he didn't know why the ice-cold flame had called him, he knew that the ice-cold flame would not harm him. The thing was that all the corpses at the bottom of the bridge had been destroyed while the entire ancient city was flooded with 4 kinds of disasters. Going to the ice-cold flame's location now would make him encounter the threat of those 4 disasters, which made Shi Yan a little bit cautious. But the ice-cold flame was calling urgently. Shi Yan's face changed slightly. He carefully considered for a moment and then decided to take the risk. Although the 4 disasters were terrible, he had just reached the sky realm. His body was sturdy, and he also had the 3rd sky of rampage. All of these made his confidence skyrocket. "You guys stay here. I will go down to check." After informing Zhou Su and Zhuoshi, he immediately flew down to the bottom of the bridge and disappeared, not even waiting for the other 2 to utter a word. Chapter 406, The Mysterious Gate. Chapter 406, The Mysterious Gate. Where is Shi Yan? Qi Shao killed the ancient corpse opposite him and hurriedly shouted as he realized that Shi Yan had disappeared. Zhuo Su pointed to the corpse bridge, not far from there. He went down there. "What?" Qi Zhao's face changed. He asked with a puzzled look, "Why did he go down?" At this time, everyone was fighting for the secret treasures on the ancient corpses. It was strenuous for everyone coming here with the target of finding secret treasures. However, right at the time of harvesting, Shi Yan suddenly went back down. Not only did he not understand, all the warriors who realized this unusual thing also showed suspicious faces. Zhao Feng and Li Yu didn't understand it either. Everyone was fighting for the secret treasures now. If they also went down to look for Shi Yan, they might be shrouded by the 4 kinds of disaster. Even if they could luckily survive, they were afraid that they could not find the secret treasures here. Therefore, although Zhao Feng and Li Yu had a doubtful look, they didn't go down to find Shi Yan. Seeing that Shi Yan had gone, the warriors here let out a sigh of relief as they thought that they could relax a little bit. In their eyes, Shi Yan's threat was greater than anyone else's. Having such a dangerous competitor as Shi Yan absent obviously made them happy, and they didn't care why Shi Yan went back down. "Grandpa, will Shi Yan be all right? Why did he go back down?" Zhuoshi stood on the stone ladder looking down, but her sight was blocked and she couldn't see anything. "He definitely has his own plan. We cannot use common sense to evaluate this kid. If there weren't anything important, he wouldn't have gone down at this time." Zhuo Su calmed her down. "Don't worry. That kid will be okay. He is smarter than anyone else. I think that if he has decided to go down, he should have detected something." Hearing Zhuo Su's words, Zhuoshi felt less worried. However, she still stood there looking down. At the small silver lake, 4 kinds of disasters were covering the whole area. Shi Yan had his entire body shrouded with starlight while his face was solemn. He could feel the power of the star shield. He took a deep breath and walked over the silver lake. Frost, lightning, flames, and storms, the 4 kinds of disaster raged in the ancient city and enclosed everything. Looking ahead, he realized that under the influence of these 4 kinds of disaster, the ancient city's walls had collapsed. Many 100-meter-high stone fortresses had fallen, turning into piles of stones. Hundreds of thousands of different beasts gathered outside the silver lake. All of them opened their mouths, which looked like basins of blood, shooting icy lights from their eyes, looking at the weaving points of light in the sky. As soon as Shi Yan appeared, those beasts immediately wanted to jump over and rip him off. Shi Yan's face became colder. He looked at the flock of beasts, not daring to act rashly. He only continued to use the star shield to resist the impact of the 4 kinds of disasters. With so many beasts like this, even if he were arrogant, he didn't dare to do anything reckless. Once he was submerged by those beasts, he would definitely not be able to escape death, given the situation that he could not use the gravitational field. The ice-cold flames' cry still came from the north. It seemed to know that Shi Yan was down here, and thus it left that place in the north and quietly approached him. As Shi Yan felt the ice-cold flames' movement, his mind then relaxed a little bit. He continued to retreat in the lake, using the star shield to resist the disasters. These 4 kinds of disasters had a terribly destructive power. Under the destruction of this power, the star shield was draining its star power fast. That will not last long. Shi Yan frowned, thinking of a solution. It was not easy to gather star power, let alone absorb the starlight. He had to gather this star power little by little every time, unlike the profound chi, which could also be restored through absorbing heaven and earth aura or crystal stones. Once the star power was drained out, even if he had many fanciful tricks, he would hardly be able to use them, which would weaken his strength. As the trip in the dark, magnetic, noxious mist had not ended yet, if the star power was soon depleted, the remaining journey would be difficult. With that thought, Shi Yan decided to risk his body and the dark shield to fight against the disasters. He immediately used his profound qi as the energy source for the dark shield. As soon as the dark shield appeared, his body also turned purple while the magical power burst out from his muscle fibers. He retrieved the star shield. The strange power of the 4 kinds of disasters quickly reduced the defense energy of the dark shield. The profound qi crazily infused the dark shield with more energy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A strange sound came from the dark shield. Under the influence of the 4 kinds of disaster, the power of the dark shield reduced quickly. In only half a minute, 1/3 of Shi Yan's profound qi that was injected into the dark shield was already consumed. These kinds of disaster are really powerful. I am not sure my body can withstand them or not. Shi Yan suddenly wanted to fight with them to see if his petrifaction martial spirit could withstand this level of disasters. He suddenly retrieved the dark shield. The 4 kinds of disasters, including flames, frost, lightning, and storms, instantly covered his entire body and then seeped into his pores, penetrating his body. So painful. Pain spread out in his whole body. When flames, frost, lightning, and storms infiltrated his body, a terrible pain expanded all over his body. This pain was unbearable to ordinary people. It would probably be too painful, and they would go unconscious and lose all means of defense. However, Shi Yan always wanted to try his limit, and also his willpower. Thus, under this pain, he just gritted his teeth and resisted, not fainting immediately. The strange power in his muscle fibers was like countless threads that quickly gathered in his body. Every single fiber of his muscles seemed to be convulsing and releasing its energy. The power of his muscles resisted the invasion of the 4 kinds of disaster. His purple skin seemed to have a tremendous defensive force. Under the 4 kinds of disasters, his body suffered no split or crack. The ice-cold flame turned into a bunch of cold lights, flying over from the north, crossing the beasts and hovering above Shi Yan's head. I will take you to a place where there seems to be something. However, that place has horrifying barriers, and even I couldn't enter. But maybe you can. The ice-cold flame sent out a message and turned into a snowflake right in front of Shi Yan's chest. With Shi Yan as the center, an extremely cold air spread out. In a short instant, Shi Yan became a huge ice sculpture. His whole body emitted terrifying cold air. The ice block helped Shi Yan resist the impact of the 4 kinds of disasters. Your strength has been restored. Shi Yan asked with surprise. Not completely yet. I have recovered 70%, so it is actually enough. The ice-cold flame sent out a message. When it released the chill, even the beasts had to be scared. When the chill diffused, those gathering beasts immediately moved backward. The ice-cold flame was still constrained by the blood vein ring, and thus couldn't release its real power. Right now, it was out of the blood vein ring, turning into a snowflake attached to Shi Yan's body. The cold air that it released could freeze the whole ancient city. Shi Yan suddenly remembered the scene when he had first met the ice-cold flame. At that time, the ice-cold flame, with its cold aura, had frozen an island. Moreover, it had condensed an ice-cold beast. The icy power that the ice-cold flame had displayed at that time was earth-shaking, and even God realm warriors could hardly deal with it. The ice-cold flame, after all, was the ancient heavenly flame. After ages of absorbing the heaven and earth's cold aura, it was the coldest thing and the most mysterious living being in the world. It was different from the earth flame. As for the earth flame, the time it had become a heavenly flame was too short. So, in the comparison to the ice-cold flame, even if it could absorb the sun refined spirit, the earth flame was still far behind the former. At this time, the ice-cold flame had been releasing its real power. With Shi Yan as the center, the cold air spread out and began to freeze everything. The frost power coming from the mountain from the north also seemed to be controlled by the ice-cold flame. A flow of frost power started to become a terrifying one among the 4 kinds of disaster. Under the growth of the ice-cold flame's energy, the frost power also burst out more heavily. The beasts that were accidentally hit by this cold air would be frozen immediately. However, Shi Yan was different. There was an icy power of the ice-cold flame in his body. His bones and tendons had soon been tempered by the ice-cold flame, which allowed him to adapt to the icy power here. Furthermore, the ice-cold flame was very careful to not spread the icy power all over his body. Therefore, although he was frozen, under his body's surging force, he could still move comfortably. But of course, it wouldn't be as fast as normal. That direction, the ice-cold flame communicated with Shi Yan, pointing forward. Shi Yan didn't say any word and urged his power to move towards that direction, dragging along a thick ice rock. Along the way, the ice-cold flame continued to release the cold air which tightly attached to the icy power of the ice rock to reduce the impact of the 4 kinds of disaster to the minimum. Hence, Shi Yan's body wasn't being affected much by those kinds of disaster. The cold air spread out wherever Shi Yan passed by. Although the beasts wanted to attack him, they couldn't bear the invasion of the icy power and thus had to retreat immediately. Without the gravitational field, but with the use of the mysterious icy power of the ice-cold flame, Shi Yan was still unharmed in the middle of those beasts. Moving towards the direction that the ice-cold flame indicated, Shi Yan went all the way back to the collapsed ancient city. Inside an old temple in the southwest of the city, he saw the dead body of a huge beast. That beast had only one eye. Inside the eyes, lights interweaved, and the 4 kinds of disasters were condensing and accumulating, vaguely forming a mysterious heavenly gate that led to another mysterious place. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.